Start in a minute. YouTube is connecting right now. All right, we're connected. So we are now live on YouTube on the VIII channel and on Zoom. And we'll call us to order for the Region 9 Board of Education regular meeting at 7:36 p.m. on Tuesday, the 17th of November. And for board members present, just for the record, we've got Cheryl, Juliet, Mike. Did Gwen make it in? See Marilee's joining right now. Maureen, Karen. So I think we're still missing Gwen. All right, so she'll be able to join us here from the other meeting. All right, so why don't we go ahead and get started then. The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We have 3 minutes to approve from the October 20th Region 9 Board regular meeting, the October 27th ER9 Joint Boards of Education regular meeting, and the October 30th ER9 Joint Boards of Education special meeting. So I'm happy to take all these in a block if somebody wants to make that motion, or we can do each of them separately. Quite a few. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to read through all those. Pile of minutes this time.
I move to approve the minutes, all 3 minutes.
Thank you, Cheryl. Do you have a second?
Aaron.
Second, Ms. Marilee.
So if there are corrections, does that matter that we move them together?
And we can do corrections if you have a particular one you want to do corrections on. Let's just do them and then do them as amended. We'll just move through it. We've got a full agenda.
Okay, perfect.
So if there are any particular, if any board member, since we've got the motion on the floor, we can discuss or make amendments if needed.
Perfect.
So if anybody's got any adjustments, corrections, clarifications on any of the three.
So I do.
All right, go ahead, Mike.
So hang on a second, just so I can pull this up. So on the October 30th minutes, let's see. On the October 30th minute, it says recess to executive session to discuss candidate interview. I believe we recessed the meeting at that point. We did not go to an executive session. I believe the meeting was recessed at that point.
Yeah, that's correct.
As the motion says, we recessed until the call of the chair. And then, so we don't need any time that we went into executive session. That would be the time that we went into, that we recessed. And then we re-adjourned again. So we could just take out the references to executive session. We just re-adjourned rather than returning to public session. Does that make sense? I don't want to overcomplicate it, I think.
No, I'm good with that. I got the changes.
It's fine. I'll make that comment in there.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you get those, Julie? I've got them. I can
Thank
work
you, Julia.
offline.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's on page 2 of the October 30th special meeting. Just changing references to recessing to executive session to recessing the meeting and then re-adjourning the meeting. Right, it's tracking this. All right. Any other changes? Anyone else? All right. It's another discussion. So I don't know if you technically, if we want to amend the motion as to take the minutes as amended.
I amend the motion I move to amend the motion, I move to approve the minutes as amended, sorry.
As amended. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification of the motion. All right, and Mary Lee, you second? Yes, thank you. All right. So we've got the 3 minutes. All in favor, members, saying aye, raise your hand. Aye, so unanimous. So the minutes are now passed. So we will move on to item 3 on the agenda, which is student comments. And I saw Max on earlier. There he is. Max, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. All right, go ahead, Max.
So hello, we're in November now, so we've made it through our first 2 months plus, which is exciting. I wanted to start today just by saying how thankful I am that you guys have had me as the student representative to the board for almost 2 years now, and that it's been, especially in the pandemic, a very productive position, and I think it's gained a lot more weight than it had in the past. I was having some email back and forth with Dr. Harrison, and we were talking just about how it's one of the few opportunities for everyone on the board to really see the student perspective other than the times that you're in the building. So I just wanted to start today by saying thank you for that, and thank you for having me back, and for having me able to extend what it used to be from just regular events to now really giving what the student perspective is. So thank you. That being said, the events at Barlow currently are we have our Spirit Week this week. It got unfortunately interrupted yesterday due to the unexpected closure. However, today on Zoom, I can happily report that there were a good amount of kids who were partaking in our class colors day. And then I think tomorrow we have our country versus country club day, which was a big hit last year. And I think that will be very popular on Zoom. And then when we're back in the building, knock on wood, on Thursday and Friday, then we'll have our big class colors in school day. And then Friday, our annual black and gold day, which I think everyone's looking forward to, which is really exciting. We also had our student government elections this past month, which was a really exciting thing for all the people involved. I continued my tenure in student council, and we now have, there were some vacancies after the initial election, which are now filled. So I have in student council, which is the governing body for the whole school, we have a vice president who's a junior, and our other positions are filled by sophomores. So it's nice that we have a wide range there. And then in the class councils too, they were able to garner some more volunteers and some more student leaders after that preliminary election when we had a couple vacancies, which was nice. And then when we go back into the building on Thursday, we'll be able to see our halls fully decorated thanks to all the class councils and their decorations, which should be exciting, and it was a great way to start off the year with senior hall, totally colored red, and should be a good thing to lead into our Thanksgiving break, to have that extra bit of spirit in the hallways, which should be nice. And then for the rest, I just wanted to do what I've done at the past meetings and just open the floor to any questions about how students have been feeling and where we're at or anything like that, and just be able to offer any perspective that I can.
I could just jump in before you get to questions too.
Yeah.
I know Max kind of glossed over his leadership in all of this, and something that was new this year that Max initiated was the senior officers met with the freshman officers, kind of walked them through. It's been such an unusual year. And so, what are class colors and how do they decorate hallways, and just provided a little mentorship. And that's something that, people often ask me, hey, what good is coming out of the pandemic? And that's one of them, is just opening that dialogue with the classes, and something I'd really like to see future leaders, student leaders do in mentoring the younger students into class colors and Spirit Week and how we do things here. So I thank Max for that, and I'll leave it up to the board for questions. Thanks.
I just want to give a shout out to Kyle Murray, because I'm sure he would come after me if I didn't mention him. Both of us he's the senior class president, I'm the student council president. So the two of us have been working together on a lot of that stuff. So that's been fun.
So Max, I just wanted to say, as you thanked us, I feel a great deal of gratitude for your service as well. You are leaving big shoes next year. This your tenure has kind of stepped up the game a little bit. The rep usually would, read the report that Gina kind of puts in front of them, and it takes them a while to kind of, usually it takes 6 months before they even feel comfortable enough with us, that they stop shaking as they're sitting there, and you've kind of taken a whole new level. You came in very relaxed, composed, giving us way more than what's in the report, and providing us with an opportunity to really ask questions and get a better feel of what the student body is going through, especially through the pandemic, but even before the pandemic. Just so I very much appreciate all you've done for this group as well. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hi, Max, quick question. How are you dealing with when suddenly when you are in class and then suddenly the next day is announced it's out of class, and the uncertainty of, are we going to even be in class the next couple of, weeks? How's that?
Yeah, it's a lot for all the students, because as I'm sure all of you know, high school things start to spread and rumors get spread and all that, and people start talking and everything. But as far as how, these past couple days have gone with the unexpected closure and then with the all online day today, I think I'd be lying if I said it wasn't difficult for a lot of kids, myself included, of just have that rapid switch in mentality. And like for myself, I was already going to be online today, but it makes all the difference when now the teacher's online and they have to do their whole lesson from home, and now all the students are online. So you have to get everyone involved in some way. And it's weird. It's a weird transition to make, to go from the hybrid mode, half in, half out, to all out. I think it's sort of like where we were at back in April, when we were just starting that all out distance learning and we were trying to learn the ways of it. I think that's kind of where we're at right now. I had a really nice conversation with one of my teachers after our class finished today. I just kind of stuck behind in the Zoom and talked with them. And they just wanted to ask me, like, how was that? Like they weren't sure how that lesson went because they were using a new platform. And it was a good opportunity to have that dialogue with the teacher. And I think that's what's, we made a big emphasis. I made a big emphasis back in April about communication and how important that was between teachers and students through surveys and through other things like that. And I think entering this, it's not really a new phase, but with these intermittent all out days and whatever the future holds, I think having that open line of communication will help mitigate any of those fears that us students are having, because like I said, it's a difficult thing to have to go back and forth and to have to not know what's going to happen in the future. And to nobody's fault. No, we just don't know what the numbers are going to look like and the decisions that we're going to have to make. But yeah, I think we're in that kind of preliminary stage where we just have to sort of get back that all in this together kind of mode that the whole country, it felt like, was in back in April, and make sure that we keep those communications open that way. The more that we know, the more that you know, the more that the teachers know, I think the better off we will all be. And I think that's where the students are at, really, is like the more information that we can take in and the more informed that we all can be, I think that's how we can get the most effective learning.
And just to follow up, in your experience in the teaching sessions, like on the online platforms, do you feel that the students feel comfortable with being honest with the teacher? Like, that was not, we were lost, we don't know what you're trying to get at there, or can we revise that? Like, do you feel like they feel without jeopardizing their grade? You know what I mean? You know how people worry about, oh, I don't want my grade to be,
Yeah, I think a lot of that is dependent on the specific teacher-student relationship, whatever the kind of, as a year progresses, a class usually tends to kind of form a bond with each other, and then you're able to have a more open dialogue. So I'd say a lot of that is dependent on the specific class and on the group of students and the teacher. In my personal experience, you all know me fairly well. I'm an outspoken person. So I personally have been, communicating with my teachers a little bit and telling them what's worked and what hasn't. But I think I think the most effective thing going forward would be to make sure that the kid, like, not I like I said, like, I'm the person that will go talk to the teacher after class and tell them how I felt, but there's a lot of kids who won't, and I think those kids are really the ones who are probably going to, we need to make sure we're picking their brains more than anyone else, because they're not the ones that are communicating with us, and they're the ones that we need to be communicating with us. And part of that can come from my end, talking with my peers and reporting back to you guys, but a lot of that also would come from just that, because exactly like you said, Mrs. O'Brien, it's a difficult thing for a student to go up to a teacher and tell them what they just did wrong in a 42-minute class period. But I think with either anonymous surveys or those the kind of listserv surveys that we had back in the spring, I think that would be a really effective way to kind of see where everyone's at and see, even on the specific class level, like what kind of lessons were working. So if we had, in my choir class, obviously things are really difficult because singing is, you can't sing over Zoom, so you got to find ways to do it. So today we had a really effective plan where we went in our sections. So basses, sopranos, and everyone were in their own sections in breakout rooms. And then the section leaders kind of led that section and said, okay, what do we need to work on? And when you have a smaller group, it's more effective. So it's about learning what each class individually needs. And I think that the teacher to student back and forth, although difficult, is probably the most important part. And I think probably using surveys and other things like that would be the most effective way of getting it.
Thank you. No, the reason I was asking was because I had a conversation with a teacher, and just because we might be going forward with more online learning, I think that addressing the issues of like the students, what their concerns are, because he felt that the students tended to be hesitant to give feedback or to even ask a question, because it was almost like you don't want to be the one raising your hand, that kind of a situation. So if there's a way that maybe that could be addressed going forward for, since online learning looks like it might be, hopefully not, but might be inevitable. So.
Yeah, I think those surveys are probably a really effective way to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Max, following up with what Karen was asking about, I know that the teachers and administrators and all the support staff are working as hard as they can to support the students as much as they possibly can. But, we're going into budget season and we're looking at what are priorities for students this coming year. And one of the things I'm wondering is, do you think students could tell you if they needed more support in terms of the social emotional component? If more, if they're comfortable speaking with their guidance counselors or our wonderful social workers as well that are there, is there anything that we should be looking at with providing help in that manner?
Yeah, I think, when you said that, it just reminded me of back in the spring when I sent out this mass message to everybody I had in my contacts that went to Barlow, just asking where their head was at. And that was one of the first times where I really got, some kids that I hadn't talked to since middle school sending me paragraphs about what was going on and what they needed help with. So I think that kind of direct communication is the best way to learn what kids need, because to your point, a lot of kids who feel as though they're having those kind of mental and emotional and social issues in this insane time aren't comfortable going to a social worker or going to a guidance counselor or going to, we have an awesome youth mental health first aid program too that is obviously much more difficult now with the pandemic. So I think the really effective way to do that would be for students like myself and administrators and teachers to reach out on a personal level, because when a student gets a mass survey, it's good for identifying what kind of lessons work, PowerPoints versus breakout rooms versus whatever. But for the more specific kind of nitty gritty stuff, like, hey, do you need a social worker? Do you need to talk just for a little bit, just to kind of blow some stuff out? One of my teachers started doing something almost a month ago now, I think, where the start of every week on the first day of class, she sends out a Google Classroom survey, and it's just called like, how are you doing? And it gives you an opportunity to just say like, I'm good, I'm okay, I'm not that good. And then also it uses our emotional wellness chart with the positivity and the energy level. and it kind of asks us to chart where we are in that. And I think that is one of those ways where it's anonymous, so no other students can see your replies, and it's also personal, and it gives you an opportunity to connect with the teacher. And I think that's one of the really effective ways, those kind of personal moments of reaching out. It's a little bit more difficult because it's harder to have a student stay after class or something like that. But I think just an email just to check in is a really effective way to do that, and is something that I think doesn't go unnoticed by the students who need it.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Max. Again, we always appreciate your comments and your candidness and giving us your perspective and the student perspective. So thank you very much. And what's Spirit Day tomorrow? What's the theme again?
Tomorrow is country versus country club.
Okay.
It was a big hit last year, so we brought it back.
Excellent. All right. Well, we look forward to seeing some pictures from it, and have a great rest of the week, Spirit Week.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Max
Thank you,
doesn't
Max.
read the noteworthy news, but Max is in the noteworthy news. So I want to make sure the board does read it. Max was chosen and he was on the Today Show. His question was picked and he got to have his moment of fame, because the board meetings live on YouTube just aren't enough. So we're losing him to the Today Show.
Excellent. Stepping up the game from the board meetings. All right. Very good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll move on then to item number 4 on the agenda, public comment. So we'll open it up now for members of the public to comment. As usual, we ask that you limit your comments to 2 minutes or less, and you introduce yourself first with your name and address. And Cheryl, if you don't mind helping me look for people, if you want to raise your hand or the hand symbol, participant window, we'll take a look for you and unmute you to speak.
I didn't see anyone.
Looks like Drew. Drew, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, it's Drew Luca. We live on Fire Hill Road in Reading. I guess the comment that I'd like to make, and it's more of a question to the board and the administrators, with the rise in cases that we're seeing in the towns all around us, and while we haven't reached the guidance levels that would take us into the red zone, in that yellow, orange, red progression of schools for distance learning and versus hybrid, the shape of that curve is going up very, very rapidly. And I guess I'm questioning why the schools are continuing to move forward in a hybrid or an all-in situation, when it's clear that the towns around us are rising fast, we're rising fast, and it would seem prudent to just let the kids learn in a more distant way for the next several weeks to allow this to sort of settle down, especially as we're coming into the holiday period. The other piece that I'll throw in there is it would seem to be more favorable for the parents to be able to be predictable, as opposed to the email that comes out midday or the end of the day saying that there's been a case, and now families potentially have to find daycare for their children or childcare, sorry, not daycare, but childcare for their children for the following day, and at pretty much a drop of a hat. So thank you.
Thank you. Again, for the public, again, board members, we don't have an exchange of conversation here, but we do have a topic in our discussion and possible action later to talk a bit more about the health informed model. So we will address this topic later. Mm-hmm. Any other members of the public would like to comment? Seeing none, then we'll move on to board member comment. So any members of the board like to comment?
You said that chlorine has an atomic number of 17, which means that it has 17 protons.
We're hearing about atomic number 17.
Yeah, I don't
I don't know where that's going.
I just wanted to welcome Mr. Zachary to our meetings. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. All the board members second that. to your first Region 9 meeting, and hopefully it will live up to its standards and be, till 11, 12 o'clock at night. All right,
No.
any other board member comments? Mike, I think, or Juliet, I think, Mike, I saw your hand.
If Juliet, she can go first, or otherwise
I was just to welcome him also and to let him know that we are working very hard to make our meetings concise.
Yes, we are working towards that. Not very successfully most times, but we are working towards that.
you're supposed to tell them that at 11 o'clock, but
Right. Short meeting if we're done by 11. All right, go ahead, Mike.
So I just wanted to also welcome Mr. Zachary. We had a facilities and fields meeting prior, so I did get a chance to speak with him a little there. And I also would like to make a motion to add an agenda item, capital plan consideration and review. And it can be placed wherever the board chair prefers on the agenda. So if you just give that a letter.
Why don't we, let's say we can probably see where it fits in with what we've got in here.
Would that go under administrative reports?
No, it needs to, there's discussion and possible action. So there is some action to happen. Why don't we just put it, let's just substitute it and put it in A so we can get it approved there. So we'll just slot it down. It should be fairly fast, I think.
Okay.
So we'll move it as, so the motion would be to add item A to discussion and possible action, pushing everything else down in that section. And the item is capital plan consideration and revisions.
Review.
Review.
Consideration and review.
Consideration. All right. There is a motion to amend the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Julia. First hand I saw. All right. All in favor? Aye. All right. Looks like all the board members, so it passes unanimously. All right. All right. Any other board member comment? Okay. So then we'll move on to item 6, discussion and possible action, and with the newly added item A, capital plan consideration and review. Would you like me to share out the capital plan?
That might be nice, so members can see it.
All right, if you want to go ahead and start, and I'll share my screen.
Okay, so we had a facilities and fields committee meeting prior to our regular board meeting. One of the items that has recently surfaced is our John Deere tractor / backhoe, which is our main piece of equipment, really the backbone of our whole operation as far as maintenance in the school. It's close to 20 years old, become prone to constant repair. We were informed last spring that, if there was a major repair needed, that, they advised that we consider replacing the unit as it's, exceeded its useful life. And it really wasn't advisable to continue to pour money into the unit. Walter informed us that the transmission is now failing. We're losing gears, and we're very much afraid of a catastrophic failure. This, again, piece of equipment is necessary for snow removal. It's necessary for material handling. It's necessary for field maintenance, all aspects of field maintenance. So this is really something that is, again, the backbone of our operational system. And so we discussed it at the facilities meeting, and the facilities committee moved to recommend that the Region 9 Board of Education add the replacement of the John Deere utility tractor slash backhoe to the capital plan and accept the revisions as the updated approved capital plan. So I would make that motion.
Are we?
Todd, you're muted if you're talking.
Yeah. Unmuting. There we go. Yeah. Were you able to capture that? I've got the motion. If not,
Okay, so we are making an amendment to add $60,000 to purchase a new tractor to the 2020-2021 physical plant, capital plan. Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
Approved capital plan, yes.
approved capital plan, okay.
all right. So the motion was by Mike. Do we have a second?
Second.
Was the second Mary Lee?
Yep.
Mhm.
Thank you. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote on it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So it passes unanimously. Okay. All right. So it's now the utility tractor with attachments. It's been added to the capital plan.
Okay. So now that it's been added to the capital plan, I'd like to make a motion to move that the Region 9 Board of Education approve the funding for the John Deere utility, for purchase of this John Deere utility tractor slash backhoe, not to exceed $60,000, and to fund the purchase through the capital reserve.
Mike, is that something they could ever consider buying a secondhand one, or it's not worth it because?
It's really not worth it. It has been explored, but it's not something that we would recommend.
Okay.
So we have a motion on the floor. So let's get a second, then we can have some discussion around it. So
Second.
that's Karen. So Mike has the motion, Karen second. All right. So now we can discuss any other questions around the purchase.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Juliet.
I just want to make sure I have this right. Motion to approve purchase of the utility tractor not to exceed $60,000 funded from the capital reserve?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because we have controls on amount of spend that the full board needs to approve. So we do need to approve that, and then also where the funds would be coming from the capital reserve. So that's
Okay.
the reason for the motion.
Where are we in total? Just if, I don't know, Todd, if you could
I
scroll.
can scroll down. Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry. So total right now, just over $1 million
Okay.
capital reserve.
And then of that, we have amounts allotted to spend or set to spend pending approval this school year, right?
I'll let the chair of the facility and fields answer that.
So I would anticipate that we will spend a large. I would anticipate that we will consider spending a large chunk of the reserve to do the project that we have been planning for many years, which you see on your capital plan there that we discussed, the ventilation systems, for the cafeteria and the gymnasiums, for that whole area. And so I think that we want to be careful not to spend our entire reserve. We always, the whole purpose of having the reserve is so that we have fallback if there was some sort of a catastrophic breakdown. But yes, we will probably spend, close to $600,000 to $800,000 if we do that project.
And Mike, the committee, the Facilities and Fields Committee hasn't discussed yet timing, right? We're not at that point where we'd contemplate going out to bid or anything at this point, right?
We're rapidly approaching that. We're moving quickly towards that, but we have not gotten there yet.
All right, any other discussion? Next, we will go ahead and vote then on the motion to purchase the tractor attachments not to exceed 60,000 and purchase it from the capital reserve. Paraphrasing the motion there. All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, so it passes unanimously. All right. And do we need one more motion to authorize? Well, I guess we authorize the purchase of it, but do we need to authorize Walter to move forward?
No, I think we've authorized the purchase. And so now it's in the hands of our finance director and our facilities personnel, right?
Okay, excellent. So we look forward to Clarence and Walter, you guys purchasing the new utility tractors. So we can have the sidewalks plowed and everything else that's done for us.
Thank you. We'll get right on this. Our concern is obviously being in New England and being at the elevation that Reading is, that snow coming, if that tractor breaks down, we could have some problems. So we'll make sure we'll get right on it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clarence. Look forward to working with you on it.
All right.
Same, Walter.
All right. We will move on then to the new item B, which is the class of 2020 graduation statistics. So, Dr. Penn, I don't know if you would like, or Dr.
So
Henderson,
can I ask you to stop sharing your screen? Can you stop sharing your screen?
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Don't need the. And I will ask.
And your audio is a little bit low, Jean. I don't know if you can.
Let me
up
see.
a little bit. It's just hard to.
No one's ever told me I talk quietly, so that's a brand new one. It must be the hot tea. Is that any better?
We can see you now.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a little better. Yes, thank you.
Great.
Okay, and I stopped sharing so you can share.
Wonderful. Well, I could share if you would like. I think the board has the in the administrative report are the statistics that Paula Panos, our director of school counseling, is going to go over as she and her department have been looking at the class of 2020 in this very unusual year. So would you like me to share that, Todd, for the record, or would you just like to go to?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I think that would be helpful. And just for the public, again, as you're pulling that up, this is something the board typically does around this time of year. We'd like to get a recap on past graduating class and statistics on graduation rate, which universities they went to, and those kinds of things.
Great. So I will ask, while I'm pulling that up, I will ask Paula Panos to unmute and take over.
Okay, so as you can imagine, this has been a most unusual year for us in college admissions. What we thought we knew changed rapidly over the summer as students changed their plans. And what I prepared for you was the most available data that I had. Normally, I have accurate statistics of where students have attended and where they planned on going, but there were significant changes throughout the summer. And Gina, if you're going to bring up that data, because I don't have it on my screen.
Yep, I am working on it.
Then I will speak to that. But I can tell you that we have seen a decline in students moving on. Last year, we had 209 seniors. We originally had 11 students attending two-year colleges and 178 to four-year colleges. I can tell you that number shifted significantly as many students did not want to attend a four-year college given the pandemic and what the restrictions would be. Post-grad work and apprenticeship has always been a smaller number for us. But you can see that we had a larger number of students choosing to go to work, taking a year off. That does not mean that they will not be attending college. Many of these students have expressed a desire to attend college, but that they needed to work to earn money to be able to afford college as their parents' situations have changed. We're pretty consistent on our acceptance rate to most competitive, highly competitive, and very competitive. This year we saw an uptick in Ivy League admissions. We had 4 students admitted. The 56 students that applied early decision is a significant number, as this year we have seen a decline in students applying early decision. In fact, we have seen a decline in students applying at this point, which is pretty consistent statistically across the country. So for the most part, you know, that's the data that we have. It is not accurate like I normally present, because so many parts were moving, and Debbie Farrell retired, and normally she keeps a lot of this data for us. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Can I ask you, what kind of assistance are the kids getting from the office virtually to help them with, you know, their applications and all that?
So every student has an appointment in the Career Center to set up their Common App. Every student meets with their school counselor to go through their list, to set up their applications and to submit. There is a significant amount of support, whether it's virtual or in person.
So Paula, can you speak a little bit about an area that I've been curious and somewhat concerned about, which is many students deferred based upon the pandemic. And so what I've been curious about and kind of, again, a little bit concerned is that obviously a bigger school can find ways to accommodate students who may have deferred and balance, and also provide the same types of opportunities for new applicants. However, you would think, and again, I don't know this, but I'm just, you know, rationalizing here a little bit, that you would think that smaller schools don't have that capability to increase their acceptances to include students who may have deferred and the same numbers of new applicants. So what have you heard from these schools? Is my concern overstated? Is it something that our students are going to have to deal with? Are there the same amount of opportunities? Are there more? Are there less? Are they different? You know, can you maybe speak to that a little bit so that we have a better awareness of what's going on there?
Yeah, I think you raise a really good point, Mike. And different colleges have different opportunities available. We heard from many of the smaller colleges early on in the spring that they were not going to accept deferments they would only accept a limited amount of deferments because it would impact their numbers for the following year. Yet, we have heard from many schools that students who have deferred, if they did defer and were given the opportunity to be accepted next year, that would be accepted. We don't anticipate it will have a significant impact on our current senior class. Some schools, it will affect them, but for the most part, we don't anticipate it will have a significant impact.
Right, thank you.
I have a couple of questions. I don't know if other members have questions. I'll give you a chance. I didn't see anything in the data on the military or military academies. So is that something you're able to collect? Because normally we have some people go to the academies or directly into the services.
Yeah, I actually put that in the data. I don't know how it got removed, but there was 2 students admitted to the military, and I believe both were in the Army. Nobody went to the academies last year, but I did think I put that in the data, so I'm not sure how it got removed.
And then on the 2-year colleges, is that fairly consistent with how it's been in the past for us, or are we seeing more people go the 2-year and then going to the 4-year after that?
So I would say that the data that we had when we entered it initially is not as accurate as what we know now. We have had a number of students over the summer and into the fall that decided not to go to a 4-year college and we're going to our community colleges. So I would say the community college numbers are up significantly, and we are seeing that trend this year. We have seen a decrease in the number of students who have applied early decision. Normally by November 1, November 15th, we've had 75% of our senior class apply early decision. At this point, we are down to 50%. We are seeing an increase in the number of students communicating to their counselors that they are going to do a 2-year college experience and then transfer. So I think there's a significant shift, and I think it's all about the pandemic, and it's about finances, it's about where families are. And so this is a shift for us. I think you'll see our numbers are going to be significantly down next year in terms of our percentages of students going to 4-year schools versus 2-year.
Can I just follow up on that a little bit, Todd? I wonder if you could speak to that a little further in that. So I'm well aware. So my daughter is accepted in a 4-year college, so she's there. Now the colleges make the move during the pandemic to go all online. So students all come home and they're doing all their studies online. Now, from what I'm hearing, many students actually skip a semester and are doing classes at community colleges because it's much less expensive. But because they've already been accepted and they're already enrolled in the school and they just took a semester off, they can actually go back, and as long as they've cleared everything in advance, most of those credits, if not all of those credits, get transferred into where they're currently going to school. The concern I have is that when a student says, coming out of high school, I don't want to go away to a 4-year college because we're in this pandemic conditions, and so I'm going to go to a 2-year college, or I'm going to go to a local community college or whatever. Are we advising them on the path to get from there into a four-year college later on, whether or not that's easy to do or not. I try to advise any parent that will listen that actually, and I'm sure you're aware that if students go to one of our Connecticut community colleges and they do well there, they actually have a smooth transition to go to like UConn or one of those schools, because they're they've kind of set the system up that way. However, what happens for them to get to one of these other universities, private ones, and again, is there some way that we could provide some guidance to our students that we don't end up where they cut off paths that might have been open to them because they didn't follow the process, the right steps. In other words, they should have gotten into the college and then taken the deferment or whatever. I just want to be sure that our students are getting that information and that we're kind of guiding them, because obviously these are really uncertain times. And I think, obviously it's such an essential thing for, your schooling moving forward, that you make the right step at the right time.
So Mike, interesting to your point, I would say that all students are advised in a appropriate, what works for their family, what works for them as a student. And it is not necessarily a negative to start at a community college. We have students who have started at Norwalk Community and have gone to Yale. And if you remember, in our graduating class last year, one of our top 10 students opted to go to a community college, was admitted to many prestigious schools, but made a choice that worked for him and his family. So as a counseling department, what we do is provide students with all of the information, and we try to help them make the best decision that works for them as a family. So I would not say that we would advise students one way or another, but that we help them problem solve and come to a solution that works for them. There are many productive routes to a successful college experience, whether it is beginning in a community college or beginning in a four-year school. We're in a pandemic. This is unprecedented times. We as counselors spent most of our summer on webinars and in conferencing with directors of admissions and trying to get a really healthy understanding about where the state of college admissions is and where it's going. It is fluid. We don't have any black and white answers, but we are helping families make the best choice that they could make. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Mike, if I could just jump in and add to that question, because I've seen this on the other side with how community colleges are receiving students. And so they also have counselors there. And so when they are working with students to develop their program of study, in many cases, they'll say, are you looking to transfer to a four-year school? Let's go ahead and look at what classes that you're going to enroll in to ensure ahead of time that these will then transfer into that program. And like you said, the connection between our community colleges in Connecticut and all of our state universities, it's a really smooth transition. But those community college counselors also are comfortable working with many of the private schools as well, so that they have a really good sense of steering kids in the right direction as far as what are the appropriate courses to take to ensure that they'll transfer and be applied to that four-year degree.
Right. I would agree with you, Dr. Harrison.
Thank you.
Todd, I have just a quick question for Paula. Paul, you mentioned that the early applications, or whether it be early action, early decisions, or it's less compared to last year, right? 50%. Any sense on, but the acceptance rates don't seem to be affected, despite the fact that many kids deferred who graduated from 2020. Any sense yet of those who did early apply, nonetheless, if they're going to, how quick or long the response may be from colleges? Sounds like it may not be much of a difference.
There is no change. I mean, I think we'll know between December 15th and January 1st for most with our early decision applications, but I don't think those deadlines have changed.
Even also regular follow-up to that regular decision, no expected change in timing, right? Even though you may have, okay.
Nope.
Great, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Again, I appreciate you, Paula, sharing that information. As having a student that graduated last year through the pandemic, and I've got another one getting ready to graduate, and we've been doing all our early action. So I appreciate the information as a parent as well. So,
yeah, it's just a crazy year. My son is ready to graduate and there's no graduation ceremony, and we hired a moving company to move him back to Connecticut so I don't have to be exposed to COVID in Indiana. It's just crazy. So God bless all our families who are going through this.
Absolutely. All right, thank you. All right, and with that, let's move on to the next item in discussion, possible action, item C, which is the update on health hybrid model and other operating models. So, Dr. Harrison, do you want to start us off with this, or?
Sure, I'll start us off. Good evening, everyone. As you know, last week on Tuesday, I sent a message to all of our families across all 3 districts, sharing that based on our current health data, where we were last week with the number of positive cases per 100,000 over a 14-day rolling average, that our numbers had moved into that sort of yellow area, or orange area, where we really should consider decreasing the amount of density in all of our schools. We were fortunate at the high school level that we were already in a hybrid to control for density based on the recommendations from the health department prior to last week. But in collaboration with the health directors from Easton and from Reading, it was really clear that we wanted to take a proactive approach to think about what are some things that we could do to maintain and promote the health and safety of our students and our staff in a really data-driven way. One of the things that I've been asked many times is, so what's the magic number, right? Is there a magic number that when we hit this number, then there's kind of an automatic response that we will do exactly this? And I'll tell you why that's a really tricky piece. So it's tricky because we have our state guidance that is obviously driven by our data. So there is the recommended responses based on our leading indicators. So our leading indicator is that, like I mentioned, the number of new cases over a 14-day period per 100,000 population. And that's a number that can be comparable across towns, even when you have small towns like, 9,700 or around 9,700 residents in Easton, in Reading, and about 7,500 in Easton. But then the secondary indicator is really looking at our positivity rate. And so there was a period way back in early October, which, I mean, really just seems like, years ago, the way that each day is like a 1,000 years in and of itself. But back in October, where I think it was in Reading, we saw a spike in that leading indicator, which if we were just going straight out on numbers, that would have been a time for us to shift for the entire Reading district back into a hybrid. But because we're talking about such small numbers, those numbers actually represented positive tests within one family. And so it obviously wouldn't be appropriate to make a shift based on that. So that is really just one indicator of many that that really helped to guide the decision. And again, I think that a huge piece of this is really looking at other factors like how our ability to staff the building, whether or not we're seeing spread within schools of the virus. And then of course, we don't live in on an island. So really thinking about the impact of districts and towns around us. Since last week, where we were in the orange, based on our data that was released today, and this data comes out on Tuesdays and then again on Fridays. Based on that data today, we have crossed that threshold into the red zone based on the number of positive cases over this last 14-day period. We have seen a significant spike in the number of positive cases within our community, both with students and unfortunately also with staff. And it is, as I mentioned in my email to all of our community, I think earlier this week or either the end of last week, that it is becoming more and more difficult to make sure that our schools are adequately staffed. We have done a really good job, I'm proud to say, with being able to engage in contact tracing in a really efficient manner. So, as Max mentioned, as all of you know, we had an incident yesterday where we closed the building for the day, although learning continued through distance learning. But we closed the building to make sure that we had an opportunity to really contact trace and spend some time getting a real sense of what the impact was and really identifying the number of students and staff that needed to be in quarantine. Now that we are in this new range, I tried to hint towards what is looking like the inevitable, that it is really prudent for us as for our teachers, for our families, to really be prepared for having to make that shift, because I think that it is coming. From the time that I left the office today to coming home to prepare for this meeting, when I checked my email once I got home, 2 additional towns very close to us have already shifted to remote learning because of spikes that they're seeing in their data. The things that we have to, and some of those are, like I said, because of increases in the number of positive cases, just like we're seeing in Easton and Reading, but also because of staffing. What I know to be true is that we have several of our teachers in one of the districts that I learned of this evening. Several of our teachers are have children in those districts. So that closure will then impact our ability to staff our schools adequately. So I say all that to say that we shifted into this health-informed hybrid starting yesterday in response to the data increases that we saw last week and in collaboration with our health directors. But we are headed for the inevitable shift to remote learning. And as I listen to comments from students like Max, as yesterday I had an opportunity to meet with the entire JBEA Association and hearing from our teachers. And I think that that our folks are very prepared to continue moving forward with high quality learning for our students in a distance learning environment. But what is the biggest challenge, and we heard this from Max tonight, is the not knowing. And so I approach all of these decisions, not just as a superintendent and thinking about what's most important for our students academically and for our students and staff from a health and safety standpoint, but I also think about this like a parent. And it is very difficult to be able to plan for your family to have some sense of normalcy when we are, we're in, then we're out, then we're in, then we're out. Even doing the contact tracing throughout the day, as we were, our folks were contacting students to let them know that they needed to be in quarantine. We also recognize that some of those students are already symptomatic and have tests pending as well. And so we would then be right back in the same situation later this week where we're saying, all right, well, we're going to have to close for contact tracing. And we haven't had to do that closing for contact tracing at the elementary level in particular. And part of that is because of the ability to cohort. And so you can really narrow down the number of students that you're having to consider and teachers that you're having to consider whether or not they meet the definition of close contacts. So I'm sharing all that to say that while this health-informed shift to a health-informed hybrid, which really the only difference is how we're using Wednesdays. While that was sort of the lead story in last week's discussion in preparation for the beginning of this week, we are rapidly approaching that next threshold where we are considering shifting to remote learning. And so that's kind of the larger picture and how the data is, the health data is really guiding this. I think I mentioned before that we sort of have two systems working in tandem. There's the town alert system that, when you look at that map of the entire state of Connecticut, most towns are already in red because they've crossed that threshold of number of cases. And I think that threshold for the state alert system is 15. But we're looking at, for our threshold for schools, it is that that 25 new cases over a 14-day period is kind of the threshold where we should be really considering taking that next step. And we have crossed that threshold. Obviously I've shared with our families, my intention has always been to support as much in-person learning as possible. We know that that's best for students as much as possible, as long as it's safe for our students and for our staff. With the level of spread that we're seeing across our communities. And last week I shared that we had our first probable case of within the community spread. I think that is just becoming more prevalent as we're digging into these individual cases with our students and our staff. And it is prudent to make a decision in the very near future. And so I'm happy to take questions about that. I know that Dr. Penn could give some more details regarding, shifts in schedule and as far as, what a typical day looks like. I think at the high school level in particular, we've had a couple of opportunities to practice making this shift to full distance learning at the drop of a dime, right? So getting an email late in the afternoon and having to make that shift really quickly. My goal is to be able to, when we kind of make this next shift, to be able to project out a little bit further. One of the things that just before I turn it over to Dr. Penn or take any board questions, we got guidance from the Commissioner of Education last week, essentially saying the college model, where many of our colleges are saying we are shutting down after Thanksgiving and students are not going to come back till January. And it's not, it is proactively looking at where the data trends are taking us, but it's not data informed as far as what does our current data look like this week. And so while superintendents were considering that, it was really made clear to us from the state level that that is not recommended as an approach for us as K-12 districts or public school districts, that we really should be looking at our local data to the greatest extent possible and making clear decisions from that standpoint. And so I'll be, as I mentioned, I look at this data, it's refreshed twice a week. And so my goal is to give our families as much lead time as possible, while also making sure that we're paying very close attention to what the statistics look like in our local area. A parent shared with me last week, just a nice reminder that when you're doing epidemiology, it is, and I'm not an epidemiologist, by the way. I do feel like I have a degree in contact tracing as of now, but when you're thinking about epidemiology, the goal is to stay as local as possible, because there are so many factors at the community level that impact your numbers. And so we have tried to do that with the support of both our Reading and our East End health directors.
All right, thank you for that. Dr. Pinton, anything to add? Otherwise, we'll go to the board members.
Sure. I just wanted to just add a little more context to that health-informed hybrid that we're in right now. There was one additional shift in the high school. So we have always been in hybrid, as you know, and that's actually helped us tremendously in staffing, because we've been able to, if we don't have enough substitute teachers in one particular day, we can move students into our library, and we could support more classes there. The teachers are still have a presence in Google Classroom. The students can work independently. So we've been able to keep learning going in that way. One of the shifts that we've had to make when we knew that the health-informed hybrid was coming is we went back into our cohort D. So if I can give you a refresher on cohorts at the high school, we can't totally cohort. We can't keep all of the 9th graders together. We can't keep the 12th graders together. But we do have these two cohorts, cohort A, and it's the first part of the alphabet, and cohort B, the second half of the alphabet. We have cohort C. Those are our students who are never in the building. They may participate in extracurricular activities, sports and such, but they don't come into the building for learning at all. And then we had cohort D, and cohort D were our students that came in every day for learning. So their cohort D still exists, but we had expanded that opportunity. If you recall, it was just a month ago, right? We were talking about when will we go all in? So when can we bring all the students back? And cohort D was kind of our answer for students that were struggling. I'll talk more about social and emotional needs in another agenda item. But we did have students that needed to be in, and students we wanted to be in the building. So last week we did have to call some of those families. And because of that goal, as Dr. Harrison said, to reduce the density in the building, we needed to pull back in cohort D. So cohort D right now is comprised of our students with IEPs or our students with a plan that requires them to be in the building every day. So I thank the families, I thank the counselors who have reached out to these families and have tried to work out other arrangements of how can we meet students' needs and still have them go back to their original cohort A or cohort B. We have seen a rise in our cohort C students. So in parents that are opting to keep their students out of school, because of our numbers, and it's very difficult for students. You heard Max speak about it. You know, you're in person a couple of days, you're out other days. We've had now 2 experiences where we've been in all distance learning. They've all been initiated by our need to conduct this contact tracing. So if Dr. Harrison is getting a degree in contact tracing, I am putting our school nurse, Anne Marie Gorman, right up there for a top prize. It is laborious. Our teachers keep seating charts. It's a lot of phone calls, so that we're not just telling an entire class that they need to be in quarantine, but we really are looking specifically at the activities of students, and it takes time. So in both of those cases, we've shifted to an all distance learning format. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to assure the board and the public, and to give a big shout out to the teachers that there is real learning going on when all our students are in a distance learning format. In fact, for some students, they've shared with us that it's been a better experience for them because everyone is on the same platform in a distance learning format. Obviously, in person, everyone all in is our first choice to get all of those students in front of us, enjoying Spirit Week in person, and all of the things high school has to offer. But there is such a benefit to having all of the students on the same platform. Even just I was taking notes when Max was speaking. He was talking about his chorus. And if your whole alto section is online with you, you could put them all in a Google Hangout room, and they can sing together, and they could, it's not the same as being there. But when you have students that some are in person and some are on the computer, it just makes it more challenging. The teachers are doing an incredible job with it, but we've only done it twice, and they've been successful opportunities for students to learn. So I just throw those 2 pieces, the reduction in cohort D, and then the idea of all of our students on the same platform. There are some benefits to that.
Right. Thank you. Board members.
I have 2 questions.
Yep.
Todd, one is with respect to contact tracing. So thank you for those who are earning degrees in contact tracing. So I understand that the nurse's office in school is primarily responsible for reaching out to whoever may be impacted by a positive case, right? So, but at what point, to the extent that the student has had contact outside of people that are either working for the school or go to our student or a member of the staff, does the health department pick up at that point?
Yeah, so I can speak to this. I will say, Cheryl, that has been one of the challenges, just knowing where to hand off. And I think that the school districts have tried to really partner with the health department, understanding in a lot of cases their limitations as far as their staffing and ability. And so when we know that one of our students has had contact with other students, but it wasn't necessarily at a school event, so whether it was, playing basketball at the Boys and Girls Club, if it was involved with our students, we're going to try to pick up some of those, some of that and assist as well. And then they've been done a really nice job keeping us in the loop when they hear of a case and they're doing contact tracing and it involves some of our students that they're hearing first from a student, from an outside student event. So it's really, it's really so case specific and trying to communicate as much as possible. What we're finding is, from the tracing of the like being able to see where the person was exposed, who ended up testing positive, to really identifying how many people they came in contact with. 2 weeks ago, we were able to do that much more effectively than today. And part of that is because community spread is now at a different level. So it is really hard to really hone in on who were you actually in contact with. And like I mentioned, in some cases, by the time we're making the call to say you've been exposed or your child has been exposed, in some cases the parents are saying, you know, my child is already symptomatic and has already gone for a test. Yeah.
Okay. And then just a follow-up question, to the extent that I know we're going to monitor and see how it goes before we perhaps inevitably go back all in. So in terms of what all in, or excuse me, all out, in terms of what all out looks like, is it primarily similar to the plan that we reviewed in the summer in terms of that all out plan? I think the scheduling, and just so to the extent that, you know, I know we've already been doing a good job of communicating in advance what we're going to do, but to the extent people want to refresh now, is that a good resource to use? That all out plan that's in our on the website?
Yeah, I think that the plan that's on the ER9 website, I mean, that's, I probably am looking at that twice a day. And, you know, just to reference back to be able to say, you know, here's what we already communicated. But I would also look specifically at the school-based plans that are also posted on the individual school websites, because I think there, Dr. Penn has their schedules that they would follow, and all of those pieces as well.
Great. Thank you.
Other board members? Mike, let's see your hand up.
Okay, so thank you. So first, I wanted to better understand our process relating to selection of the learning mode. I know we have a reopening plan. I did reread that, and I reread the motion, and it seems like, and again, I'd like to better understand this according to what the governor's requirement was as far as school districts, but it seems almost like the reopening plan was for 4 weeks. And now we seem to be past the 4-week threshold. And so I'm wondering, because I'm looking at other towns, and it seems like the Hamden Board of Ed approved going online learning. So it seemed like that was a board decision. And obviously, Dr. Harrison and Dr. Penn, we would value your input and your expertise as a guiding light as any decision is made. But I would like to better understand whose decision that ultimately is. And I would like to request that we get that board members can provide greater input relating to the preferences of our communities, and have a thorough discussion relating to how we move forward. I do have some, other questions relating to, right now, I think New York City has like 2.77% 7-day rates. And the mayor there has said that once they hit 3%, they're closing and going online. And I was looking, in Connecticut is at 5.4. So we're above the 3% already. Obviously, we're not the same densely populated community. It's much different, but I still would like to better understand how these decisions are made. And I know, Dr. Harrison, I applaud your communication with the state, Department of Education. I am more focused, laser focused on our communities. I tend to think that the State Department of Education has a broader overview where we should be more laser focused on our community and what's best for us. I'm also very much a type of person that I feel like a lack of continuity is really detrimental to education. And I can appreciate Dr. Penn saying that, online, they've seen, great success with that as well. But I think, again, from my perspective as a non-educator, let's be clear, I'm not an educator, but I do see that a lack of continuity must be, or appears that it could be detrimental to the learning process. And so I'm just trying to better understand how our current procedures are factoring into that. And, I do appreciate the opinion that we should give parents plenty of opportunity to make arrangements for, childcare and for, work arrangements. I certainly am a big proponent of that as well. But I'm wondering, at what point are we going to make a decision? Who's going to make that decision? And when can we have a comprehensive kind of discussion over, the whole situation relating to the learning mode?
Yes, I'll direct that back to Dr. Harrison. I think you answered some of that in your opening statement, but maybe you want to reiterate.
Sure. So part of the reason of referencing the guidance from the State Department of Education is really just to show that the state has provided us with, here are all of the data points that you should consider, that superintendents should consider when determining what the best learning model is. And so from the beginning of this process, and of course, I wasn't here when the development of the district-wide plan was happening. I came in right on the tail end. But in all of the guidance that we received from the state, the one thing that I think has been consistent is that when it comes to the learning model and the response based on the health data, the community health data, that is a decision that the superintendent is supposed to make in collaboration with local health departments. And the benefit of having the local health piece is because the state is saying, here are the data points that you should be considering. And this is all laid out in an addendum 4. I sent this out to all of the board members and then also to all of our staff, just so that they were kind of aware of the data that are being considered in making these determinations. But essentially, here's all the data that you should consider. And now let's look, you work with your local health directors to determine what is that, how do you interpret that data in your community? And so again, I think that what started as far as guidance that we initially received from the state was very, very broad. And basically it was guidance around looking at our data from at the county level. So basically it would have been all of Fairfield County saying, we're all going to do this at the same time. And that just wasn't appropriate, because I think that despite there being some consistency as far as what we're seeing in spread, each town is really different. And so so there was the shift early on towards the start of the school year to say that superintendents and their health directors need to be looking at this data at the town level and very specifically looking at what is the impact on schools. And so that's sort of where we've been. I'm happy for us to have more discussion about this. I think the challenge is when I'm talking with our local health directors, they are privy to, so any case that we have within our schools, they are aware of the specifics of who those people are, when they tested positive, and the details surrounding how many people are quarantined, or what has been sort of the pattern of spread leading up to that case and then following from that. When it comes to cases in the community outside of the district, I'm not aware of that, and they don't, so they're not giving me information of, what here's the parents that have tested positive. I mean, they're not sharing that data with me. But those two pieces of data coming together really helps to make a localized decision. The challenge we're doing it as a collective decision, or if there was, we set a target number and then we voted either in advance that when it got to that number, here's how we would shift, or we're bringing everyone together to vote on that, is you can talk about the generalities of the data, but I can't in a public meeting talk about the specifics that that might be unique factors in why this piece of data is more important than another piece. And so I think that recognizing that challenge, that's where we fall back on that state guidance of, this is the determination of the superintendent in collaboration with local health departments based on this data. I think that what we saw in the spring was, the governor stepped in and said, here's, we're closing all schools. Do I think that we are heading in that direction? I do think that is likely to come in the future. But I think that what I've heard in the emergency, sort of the Department of Emergency calls that I participated in on a weekly basis, and then the governor's conference calls, has been a real pushback on wanting to make these decisions at the local level, because it just makes a lot more sense. And at the local level, this is where we're able to look at some of the staffing concerns as well that wouldn't necessarily factor into the data. So if I have 3 teachers who have quarantined, who have tested positive, or they're in quarantine, they work in our districts, but they may live in Brookfield. So they may not show up in our data, even though that might be exposing our students. And so those are some of the other pieces that become points of discussion in those meetings with our health directors as well.
If we cross a certain, if we cross one of the thresholds, and or not if, or when we cross it, how long would we be out? Is there a predetermined amount? So, if we don't make it until Thanksgiving and we're out, how long would we be out and be in hybrid?
So
full remote, I guess, not a hybrid, but full remote.
Yep. So, as I mentioned, we get new data on Tuesdays and Fridays. I received the data this morning. We've crossed the threshold. I am planning to send an announcement tomorrow, talking about that sort of our next steps with needing to shift. What my plan is to shift us to look at that kind of across a 2-week period. And so being able to make a determination for, here's what things will look like for the next 2 weeks. And then that will give us 4 data points to look at and be able to measure where the data is trending, and then really look at it in 2-week chunks. Part of the benefit of looking at it in 2-week chunks is, the time period for quarantining is 14 days. And so that gives us a real sense of being able to be a little bit more predictable as far as what our staffing concerns may look like, and then also being able to give our families some notice so that they can plan ahead.
Right. So if just so I make sure I heard correctly, so in a 2-week chunk, so if we go out before Thanksgiving, we'd have a 2-week chunk, so there would be a possibility we could be back in hybrid before the end of year break that would happen.
Correct.
Okay. So we're not going to make a call for, if we're out at Thanksgiving, we're out until the first of the year.
Correct.
Okay. And one other question I was just going to ask on the Wednesday half days or the early dismissal days, is that something that's going to continue as well, Dr. Penn, or is that, because I know we haven't budgeted any more PD days. I know you were pulling some PD days forward, but if we're still in, all remote, is it going to be the full 5 days, or there's still early dismissal Wednesdays or half Wednesdays, PD Wednesdays? Can you address that?
Right. So in our all out plan, there is a Wednesday time for the teachers. There's actually a in our schedule right now, and I could probably pull it up for you. There's in a full distance learning plan, we're actually starting school later. So the high school starts at 9:30, I think was in our plan. We've been working with families and teachers and trying again, as Mike said, that consistency. So instead of taking PD from 7:30 to 9:30, we've actually kept our start time the same on Wednesdays. And that schedule would and could change if we go into a full distance learning, but we will strive to stay as consistent to our schedule as we can, because our students at the high school check in and have synchronous learning in every class. And that's been working very well. We've been taking attendance every period, very different from the experience in the spring when we just weren't set up to do that.
Okay, so we wouldn't have the additional PD days right now or planned in December.
Right, our last planned professional development early dismissal day is December 2nd. And I'll actually be speaking about that. That's part of our DEI work and our work with the consultants. After December 2nd, we don't have any planned professional development until we pop in 4 more days in the spring that align with the K-8 program. But in our all out plan, there is time for the teachers to meet and to collaborate to talk about curriculum and to have office hours and to continue that process.
And that's in the morning before school?
Right now, it's in the way the plan is written. I believe the way the plan was published, it was in the morning, and I have to pull it up again. We have made it the afternoon PD to keep it consistent for the students.
But taking away more instructional time for the students, with the amount of professional development that they've already had, I just feel like the students are the ones that are kind of, missing out on this, regardless of whether it's consistent to the schedule or not. Like, wouldn't it make more sense if you're going to start school later to have PD in the morning before, and then not having Wednesdays be more like a missed afternoon when they could be having additional learning time?
Or I'm sorry, I was just looking something up on the computer. So the placement of those hours, is that what you're referring to? So right now we have them placed in the afternoon. We're having early dismissals on Wednesdays.
That's why I'm wondering, why do we still need to have early dismissals at this point in the game?
So what we've been doing so far, Karen, in our early dismissal time is this has been the adjustment into distance learning. So this has been our training time in new platforms. It's been our time in using Google Forms. In fact, if you look at Dr. Pearson-Ugel's report, you can see on that back page of her report, or second page, all of the technical things that we've been doing in professional development. The shift then will be, how are our students doing in their distance learning format if we are all out? How are we providing that extra help? Shifting to office hours and having time for our students to have one-on-one time with teachers, with counselors. The other big piece of the pie that we have to address is the curriculum itself, that we are starting to, but the professional development time up to this point, it's been a lot of those technical, those beginning days of school, were all of those mandatory trainings on PPEs. It was setting up classrooms. That's not professional, what we would call professional development. It was professional time. It was needed. We needed to do that work. November had us shift into the technology pieces of this, getting our presence in Google Classroom, all of those skills that you see on that back page, looking at those forms. Now the conversation is shifting to the assessments of students. How do you assess students online? If we're all online, what will that look like? What parts and what units of the curriculum, as you mentioned, might we not be able to get to in this year? So that's that time, and that professional time is
right.
needed.
But what I'm asking is, if you're shortening the day with them starting at 9, and then you're going to then take another half a day for professional development, can't you use the time from 7 to 9 for professional development?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Most definitely.
and what will the Wednesdays be? The Wednesdays will be for office hours for the.
It'll be part of that time, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I share Karen's concern. If we're going, to be all remote again, and we're going to be starting late, and we're still going to do early Wednesdays for continuing learning. I mean, we've been continuing learning for 6 months. I think we need to be instructing for the full day. So I totally am on board with what Karen's saying here. I don't think we need more transitional time, early dismissal time. We need to be teaching the kids.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. I mean, because we have, let's just say we have 2 possible scenarios here where we're shifting back and forth throughout the remainder of the school year between all out and hybrid. But say we had a scenario where it's the rest of the year, it's all out, or a scenario that's all hybrid. In the hybrid scenario, the kids are going to get more instructional time. In the all out scenario, say that happens theoretically the rest of the year, they're going to get half a day less on Wednesdays. And that's over time, that's just going to be detrimental. I understand there's, and what's the transition adjustment here? Perhaps we can give some leeway in terms of developing the assessment of the student's ability to learn. But at some point, there should be that ability to shift, and teaching is teaching. And if you've given enough time to have one or the other and you have experience in them both, why don't we try to modify the plan somehow where we get to a point where you are having the same instructional time after a period of transition? So it should be seamless. We've had enough time to learn how to do this, and it's probably something we probably should consider.
We will take a look at that tomorrow. I mean, so in preparation for this, part of what I'll be doing tomorrow is meeting with our administrators to talk about some transition details, and so we'll look at that.
Okay. We'd appreciate that. Mike, I got a comment, but I would appreciate, and I think the other board members as well, if we could take a look at that. It is good to still, survey and understand how the kids are doing in their mental health and how they're, adjusting. But getting as much instructional time, I think, as possible is paramount.
And if we're shortening the day as it is, which I'm sure they'll appreciate sleeping until 9. I'm sure there will not be a problem.
It's not an everyday. It's not an everyday beginning at 9. So we will meet and talk about that. I'm sorry I wasn't
Okay.
better prepared with what the draft schedule might look like, but this is something that we'll talk about in the
Okay.
K-8.
And again, if we can, once that's resolved, if the schedule could get posted up again to the website so people can share it, because right now they're going to go to the existing plan that's out there.
And
we don't
that's the
wanna
plan we
cause
want them to
confusion.
go
Yep.
to right now. We are not
Yep.
making any, for people watching, right? We're not making any shift right now. And we'll make sure we communicate that schedule, especially with our synchronous attendance.
All right. Mary Lee, and then I'll come to you, Mike. So
Yeah,
we have
just-
had a chance.
Just a quick one. I'm going to take a slightly different viewpoint from my colleagues on the board. We're talking about quality over quantity. Shifting your teaching to what our teachers are doing now, I wouldn't want to be doing it. I loved teaching. This is unbelievably different. You're trying to accommodate so many different methodologies. Teachers are used to teaching one particular, manner, and everything has been thrown out the window on this. So there's modifications on probably a minute by minute basis on what they're doing. So I just say, I would defer to the administrators and the teachers on this. They have the best intentions. They care about their students and they want them to get the best education. And if they feel like a couple extra hours a week will do that, then I'm inclined to say, you know what, let's listen to that.
Thank you. I did pull up our presentation that we made back in October that the board has, which is our models for reopening. And our all-out plan called for 40-minute classes rather than 60-minute classes. It did call for office hours and rotating black gold days. Whether that is our plan going forward, I think that that's something that we need to sit down again and look at and say, is this in the best interest of our students? It's a departure from what we're doing right now. And so I appreciate your comments, Mary Lee, and we do want to get that concept of when will our teachers be available to our students, because that's a big piece in our school goals. It's a big piece in SEL. When they are in the school, students can stop by. It's what Barlow is about, students having lunch with their teachers. And so we're missing that. And so trying to come up with a schedule that allows that kind of contact and personalization so we don't lose students through the cracks. And that was part of our model of what our all-out model could look like.
Yeah, and again, I think having office hours are great. They need to continue having that. I mean, that's an important part, as you were saying, for the kids to be able to reach out to the teachers.
If I could just add, though, that I've heard from a few teachers that the students don't bother showing up for the office hours, and they're sitting there twiddling their thumbs for the amount of time that that the office hours are open. And that might be the newness of it at the beginning of the year. I'm not sure, but there could be a reflection on how much, if it's not being utilized, does it still need to be, such a big chunk out of the day?
Right.
And if it's a one way, I think that our teachers are also using it to call students and to make appointments the other way until we could get students into that routine as well. Good
Yeah,
point.
and hopefully again for the teachers, that it will make it easier if there's just one modality that they're doing instead of 3-4 different types every day. So hopefully this will make it a little easier on them as well. Mike, I know you've been patient. You had a question.
That's okay. I speak a lot, so I'm willing to wait my turn. So I do want to, before I make my comment, I want to kind of bring us all together because I think we all actually agree with what Mary Lee is saying. I think that the board really does support teachers and want them to have the time that they need to be able to be prepared for the evolving education. But I think there is maybe an articulation, continuity of articulation issue that is going on here as well, that we're not clearly understanding, how we're moving forward, which I think is leading to some of the confusion. But I want to backtrack quickly here, just because I've said already, I'm not an educator, and B, I am not an epidemiologist. I view myself more as a pragmatist. I don't know if that makes anyone feel any better, but as I circle back to when we're talking about looking at snapshots in 2-week spans, as far as what learning module we're in, and I'm coming back to where we say, well, would we be out from Thanksgiving? Would we be out until January? And no, we would want to look at it in 2 weeks snapshots. And again, in my mind, I'm saying to myself, so again, based on what I know, if we're out for Thanksgiving, and if there's a high incident risk of transmission during the Thanksgiving holidays, and if there's a 2-week incubation period, then it seems strange that you would come back after Thanksgiving any sooner than 2 weeks later. Once you come back 2 weeks later, you have essentially 2 more weeks before you go into Christmas. Christmas, again, is going to present the same issue, where you're going to have a high rate of transmission, or the likelihood that there could be a high rate of transmission. And then you're going to have another 2-week incubation period after that, which puts you smack dab in the middle of January, which I think is why these decisions are being made in that manner. And so I'm wondering how our approach is better for students, if we could speak to that.
So I'm not really sure how to answer that question, because I wouldn't necessarily say that it is better for students or worse for students. The point that I was making, as far as being able to continue to look at the data, is that given the guidance that we have from the State Department of Education, I don't have the ability as a superintendent to just pick a date in the future and say, we are just going to be closed until this date. And it is, so it's always been clear to me that superintendents have not had that level of flexibility. And then that was very much clarified in guidance that we've received from the commissioner last week. I think that you are very smart in the way that you're thinking about how the data will likely shake out. And so, I mean, I think what you're asking me is to make a decision that I can't do that. And so based on our charge as superintendents, I mean, we have to do exactly that we're making more of these shorter term decisions and paying very close attention to the data.
Right. And I respect it. I am not trying to give you a hard time, Dr. Harrison. I'm just trying to better understand how, some school districts are making a decision to be out until mid-January,
but they're not. So I think that's the point, that some schools initially said that they were going to be out until January, and some school districts were contacted by the state, and some school districts were told to go in a different direction because of that. And so, I think what we're seeing is that does not follow the spirit of the directives that we were given as superintendents.
So basically, we're on the 2-week kind of rolling, checking the data until the commissioner tells the superintendents otherwise, or the governor sets another executive order.
Correct.
Is that fair to say?
You not choose to be out until the middle of January. You're saying that they have to make these decisions every 2 weeks because the Department of Education, which really doesn't have jurisdiction over us, is telling us that.
Dr. Harrison, can I share something?
Sure.
I think part of the confusion here is that we all have to remember that the obligation to educate the students of Connecticut is the obligation of the state. The state delegates it down to the local level. So the state doesn't give up its authority to decide. The state decides how many days the kids go to school and the format and all that sort of stuff. For what Dr. Harrison is basically saying is superintendents don't have the unilateral decision making and say, we're going to be out of school to a certain time period, because it's still, the authority still rests with the state, and the state, through the auspices of the State Department of Education, is clarifying that for superintendents that you don't have that authority. And even though it's run at local levels like the Region 9 board, it's still the state's a power that we educate kids. So that's why there's this sort of confusion. You're all used to thinking, hey, we're the local Region 9 board, we decide what we're doing here, but you're enacting the powers of the state of Connecticut in doing that. So in this case, the Department of Education stepped in and said, hey, by the way, superintendents, you might have thought you could make this decision, but you can't, because we as the Department of Education represent the state of Connecticut saying you must continue educating children in this format. I think that's what it confused, because we have this local rule thing. We think we're in East and Red deciding what we're doing with East and Red kids. What we're actually doing is doing the state's job for us, and they sometimes give us money to do that for them, but it's still the state's job to educate the children in Connecticut.
Right. No, and I very much appreciate that. I thought that we could determine as a district, again, which model we are in. We're not talking about we're ending school and we're not going to teach anyone until mid-January. We're deciding whether we're in all-in, hybrid, or online learning. And so I'm wondering why we don't have that authority to be able to say we are on online learning until the middle of January. But again, I defer to those with a greater expertise in this area. So I don't want to prolong this discussion. I just curious as to process, that's all.
Other questions, comments, administration or board around it? So Dr. Harrison will be seeing some communication, if I recall, in your comments soon. We'll be receiving some more information, and then we'll also be looking at what the all-out model schedule is like, and parents could still look at the current model that's on the website until that gets replaced.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for that discussion. It was very helpful.
Thank you.
All right. I'm keeping an eye on the clock as it's getting later, and so we really don't want your first meeting to be one that goes until midnight. So we've got a few more items on here, which we may table some, but why don't we move on to item D, the new item D, the 2020-2021 Barlow High School wide goals. And then I don't know if there's an element, Dr. Penn or Dr. Harrison, that you can put together with this school strategic profile, or if we need to keep them. I don't know how much they're going to overlap each other, but we'll try to keep them brief, and then we can table other items if we get into a discussion on those. So I think they're important as well.
To start with the goals?
Yeah, if you want to start with the goals, please. Yes.
So I can go through those fairly quickly, and actually it kind of connects with Dr. Pearson-Ugel's report as well, when she talked about the changes in our teacher evaluation model, and you could take a look at that. I won't reread that. I'll tell you that the PDEC committee, that's the professional development evaluation committee, suggested that the schools focus in 3 different areas, and that's why you will see the 3 different goals on which we're focusing. One of our primary focus areas is social and emotional learning, and I think you heard Max speak directly to that, of our emphasis. The fact that he is a teacher checking in when he talked about, you know, what are his thoughts and what are his actions. And that's the mood meter. You heard me talk about that with Yale, the work and the partnership we've had with social and emotional learning with the Ruler program. We're also guided by the work of CASEL, and that's a collaborative for social and emotional learning. So this is, SEL has come a long way in just from being soft skills that you might have heard to, you know, really being the focus that we're seeing in our our students now. So the goal sheet that will be all of our minutes and materials will be posted online. There are a couple of important links I would encourage the board and the community to go to. In that area of SEL, the goal is, I'll just read it to you. It's given the extraordinary stress and trauma experienced by many students and adults, an educational environment, and these are the important words, that's safe, personalized, and academically rigorous will be promoted. And as a result, and you'll hear in this next phrase, that intersection of the DEI work, right? As a result of this supportive, inclusive, and equitable learning environment, all students will recognize growth in SEL competencies. And I gave you those competencies as listed by CASEL. And we'll use tools in CASEL that are available. These are free tools that are indicators. Some are indicators of school-wide SEL growth. Some tools can be used at an individual classroom level. So I hope to be able to report back at the beginning of next year when we do our progress on our goals. Where is the growth and where did we recognize it? Many of our teachers are choosing to have an SEL goal for all the reasons Max mentioned in his report. We're also looking very carefully at a second area of goals, and that's the engagement of students. So we've done a lot of work with intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. There's a lot of literature out there now about how difficult it is to engage online. I notice it in board meetings when all of you, you're all little pictures on my screen. And when I share my screen, I can't see any of you. Very different from when we're all in person and we can make real eye contact and we're not distracted by cell phones or other computer screens or pieces of paper. If you saw my desk right now, it's just not the way I normally am when I'm at a board meeting. So how does that engagement when we're looking at online learning or even hybrid in-person learning, including student voice in that is exactly what Max was alluding to. How are we asking students for their feedback? So I can share with you that one of our PD sessions for tomorrow is using Google Forms, and Google Forms is more than just, you know, fill out this questionnaire, but how can we use Google Forms in a different way to engage our students? And so that's one of the PD areas that we're going to be looking at, using students in decision-making, communication, having students set their own learning targets. That's a big piece of student engagement. So that's another area that we'll be focused on. And then of course, we felt very strongly in having an academic goal, knowing that some of the standardized assessments that we've used, we're not able to use. And so that could be a challenge. Even our AP, when we present that data, we did incredibly well on the AP exams. It was a very different experience last year for our students in taking an advanced placement test online for the first time. So we're looking at curriculum-based teacher-created learning experiences. There's also some links, additional links to that document. And one I'll draw your attention to is aligning SEL goals to academic goals. And so they're not exclusive. SEL isn't something we just do in some corner over there. It really needs to be integrated into how are our students being self-aware? How are they managing their time and building relationships and making those good decisions for their immediate success, but then also for their future planning? And how does that work? So the goals really work to tie in a lot of our initiatives, from distance learning to DEI and our ongoing work with CEL and that work. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them for you, but I do encourage you to access those links.
I thank you for the presentation and the materials that you sent out around it. The only question I have is I guess how much involvement is this requiring from the teachers, and is this going to be, you know, something that's going to be, I don't want to
Did Todd just
learning modes and so forth. So how much of a time commitment, I guess, is my question for incorporating this in?
I think
it's a good idea, but I'm just concerned about overloading the teachers.
So this is, I'm sorry, I think I lost you for a second, but these are the goals that then our teachers build their SLOs, their student learning outcomes around these goals. So this is a process that we do every year. The teachers set a student learning outcome. They connect that to one of our goals in the school, and then we can report out on that progress.
Okay.
So did that answer your question?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So this is part of something that's been ongoing.
Something that they're
ongoing.
Doing.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Any other questions? And thank you for the materials. I'll take a look at the links that you have on here with the additional information. Great. Appreciate it. All right. So then let's move to the school strategic profile. Item E.
I can probably go through this quickly unless you.
No, that would be great. It is a very, very dense packet of good information, but yes, maybe a quick overview of it.
I hit the wrong information, so I just need to pull it up again on my screen.
And I guess for board members too, I mean, we'll just do a cursory review of it here, and if people want to come back and look at anything later, and there's
Todd, which attachments were those? I don't know that I.
They're in the board meeting packets. I think Gina, you're gonna display.
Yeah, it's a slideshow, and I think that what you have are the PDF of it, but I will share it with you right now, and I will go through it rapidly. Okay, so this is information that we've shared before around this time, and I will, there we go. All of the information I will go through, and I'll kind of go through it quickly. I'll just point out a couple of pieces there in the slides. We'll cover these 10 areas, and I do encourage the board and members of the community to access this information from the EdSite portal. This is a database that Connecticut puts forward, and you can get on, and if you are a data geek, you will just be able to geek out with all of this information on here. I pulled out these 10 areas. They're consistent with what I presented last year. We also received the Prouder report. If it's not already on the website, it will be. And that Prouder report is from October 28th. So you will see that reflected in this information. So the first couple of slides are from the Prouder report. And you could see in this slide, this is our enrollment from 1970 to today. You could see that our high water mark was right here. That was 1977, when we were at 1,078 students. And in 1993, we dipped down to 605 students. We climbed back up again in 2013, and that is 1,068 students. And this is where we are today at 827 students. This figure 4 from Dr. Prouder's report are the projections of where we expect our, or where he expects our enrollment to be. He speaks about a statewide decline of about 5.9%. And he sees us reaching a low of about 660 students in the year 2027. His results, as you know from reading his reports over the years, much more accurate 1 to 2 years out than they are as you get further. He says that we will get to our low water mark in 2027 and then begin a slow rebound. But next year, he's only predicting a decline of 10 students. So this was important information that I was looking for in his reports. I was really looking at a 2-year comparison to find out if our students were still attending Barlow, were more of them attending private schools or magnet schools. And so he has 2 graphs. You'll see that these top graphs represent the 2018 and 2019 data. Last year, we had 81.8% of students in our towns of Easton and Reading attending Barlow. It went up this year to 84% in 2019. The bottom graphs represent just the 9th grade. So this is important. I know that it's been a focus over the years. Are our students leaving Barlow to attend other schools? And you could see that our numbers, actually, we have more students in 2019. 87.4% of the freshman class are attending Barlow. This piece of information is, again, maybe not as complete data as we'd like it to be, but it's something that it could be worth tracking. I know it's come up in the K-8 boards. Are we losing students to homeschooling? So students that aren't going to other public schools or non-public schools, even magnet schools, but and we do see an increase in homeschool at the high school. This is significant for us because the state of Connecticut does not recognize homeschool credit. So if these students are going to re-enroll in high school, they would have been required to enroll in a virtual online course that's been accredited by the state of Connecticut. So we'll keep an eye on that information. We're still in the Prouder report here, and this is very helpful information when you look going out across our Easton, Reading cohorts from kindergarten right up to the current class of 209 seniors. And you could see that we have 189 members of the freshman class. We expect that to jump next year. So we'll have to pay attention to that number as we go through. As you are used to seeing, his Appendix A, Dr. Prouder's Appendix A goes out to the year 2031. I could guarantee I won't be here doing that report by then, but what you see over the years is what Dr. Prouder has projected, and we've seen take place in previous years as well. And that is a real consistency in the cohorts. Once the students start at the high school, it's a consistent cohort that's graduating 4 years later. So now we move in. Any slide that you see with a little ed site at the bottom, this is all public information, and you can drill down on this information and just go to town on it. This is our enrollment projection. You see this in Dr. Prouder's graph, not our projection, I'm sorry, our actual enrollment trend. And you could see that trend that the board has been paying attention to at least since 2014, when I was here and looking at that downward trend. I shared this information. This actually came from our Power School. Thought it was interesting information. It gives you the breakdown of the total in each grade. So you see 189 freshmen, 211 sophomores, and so on. And then there are 2 colors here. One is the male cohort, one is the female cohort. We are so even in our students. Look at our total breakdown. At one point, we were at 828 students. and we were 414 and 414. So we should all go out and buy a lottery ticket. But it does give you the breakdown. We've been talking a lot about DEI, about race and diversity and inclusion. And so this is good information for us to take a look at. It coincides with the information that's tracked for us by the state. And this gives us a historic trend by race and ethnicity and the year that students were there. Where you see the stars, it means that there just weren't enough students to put down without identifiable information. But it gives you some of those trends over time in our students by their race and their ethnicity. When you look at our enrollment by town, you can see the split, and this is something that I know Mr. Zachary will be talking a lot about, the apportionment and where do we see this projection heading as we move forward. Back to the EdSite data, talking about attendance. We've worked very hard on this data. This is a big shout out to our two assistant principals, Jen and Julie and Paula, and the work that they've done with our support staff in tracking attendance, in reaching out to students, and making sure no one slips through the cracks. So for me to see, you know, a 7.4% of chronic absenteeism, when you look back a few years ago and we were at 9%, this is just something we were working on. So we're very proud of this data point. And again, you can get on EdSite and dig deeper into that. As you know, we've been focused a great deal on restorative practice, on working with students so they can understand not just what rule they broke or what policy they violated, but really what's the spirit behind that policy. I think it helps a great deal having Jen Damaris as a true historian and lover of history to be able to engage students in these conversations. What we've seen is that students are less likely to repeat that behavior. We'd love to see that trend going and moving forward. We know that there are some limits to out of school suspensions. And so we've been working creatively in getting our students more involved in the restorative practice. We've had family conferences, and so we're pleased with the trends that the state is tracking for discipline. And we track it at a much more detailed level, but this was good data to look at. When we look at our staffing, this is something you will hear a lot more about. I won't really dwell on this. When we present the budget, I think it's very helpful for the board to see the names of people and be able to say, oh, that's right, this person was here. So you know the librarian, right? We had a certified librarian, and then we didn't have that position now for the past 3 years. And so it's good trend data. We were at 64 general education teachers, and you could see as our numbers have gone down, we have reduced staff in that way. The increase here that you see in administration is really due to the increase of a department chair in special education and the reclassification of some positions. And you could see this is, I know I did a shout out to Anne Marie Gorman, our school nurse. She has been a department of one for forever, and she has just been doing an incredible job through this. When we look at enrollment trends, again, when we present the budget, and I know we're having a joint budget and curriculum committee meeting coming up, but we're always paying attention to our special education subgroup, and the special education department seems to be, and you'll see it in the next slide, making up a greater percentage of our students are students with special needs. But part of that is because they're making up a smaller percentage of students. So when you go to this slide, you'll see that back in 2015-16, we were at 12.3% of students from all of these different disabilities that was the overall prevalence rate. We're up to 14%. Our numbers are not that wildly different year by year, but you could see we've gone up almost 1% every year. And part of that is because if the special education is staying, our students with special needs are staying consistent, but our students in the general ed population are going down, they're just naturally going to make up a greater percentage of that. And this graph gives you the overall prevalence, the count of those students, and some data to look at. Again, you can get on EdSite and dig deeper into this information. One of the areas that Mike Santangeli was very focused on was our physical fitness, and especially as we've entered our curriculum revision process that we started a couple of years ago. And we've looked at curricular changes that could increase our physical education results. And as you know, at Barlow, our students in 9th grade take a full year of wellness. It's mostly a PE and a how to use the equipment in the weight room. In 10th grade, they have a half a year of health. And then in 11th and 12th grade, they're splitting their time between a physical activity and also advocacy and health and wellness. So we'll continue, and Mike will continue to, and Kristen Fallow, our amazing instructional leader in wellness, we'll continue to look at this trend and students reaching that health standard and see if we could boost that number up. But we were a little dismayed at the 61%, and so it was a little nice to see that number climbing a bit. Paula spoke briefly about this. This is our trend in our graduation rate, and we're still very impressed with our graduation rate in 2018-19 at 97.8% of students that are graduating in 4 years. Again, get on the site and look at this information. It breaks it down to 6 years and 5 years, and you could just lose yourself in data here. This slide, I feel like I am speed talking, but it is late. This slide is our SAT trend data. And something I really do want to point out here is the amazing strides our teachers have done in focusing a lot of their SLO work last year and the year before on breaking down the SAT and the PSAT, looking at those specific skills, looking at the curriculum in where those skills are best addressed. Excuse me. And you could see the benefit of that. 90.3% of our students reached a level 3 or 4, which meant they met or exceeded the ERW, or in this slide, they call it ELA. That's our reading in English. And in math, we went from 71.9 to 75.2%. Just incredible growth. And so we're very pleased with this. And we will see that, I'm sure, those data points continuing to trend. And it's one assessment, but it's an important one and a very public one. So that's nice to see. This is a slide that I really do encourage you to get on EdSite. It's our overall accountability index and our readiness for college. So I encourage you to get on. You can compare districts. Every district is on EdSite. And so you can take a look at surrounding districts. This is a key number, which is the overall accountability rating. We're at 88.1%. It really puts us in the top high schools in Connecticut. This is Connecticut's attempt to say we don't just want to look at one SAT score and start to rank schools. We really want to look at these 12 indicators and take a look at them and see how schools are doing. When we look at this report card, I'll show you the numbers that stand out for us are our percentage of students with high needs and how they're doing in comparison to the rest of the school. And you could see how they're doing statewide. You know, we're exceeding state numbers, but this indicator was part of the reason that I was going to say Mike DiStefano, but this was an initiative before Mike DiStefano. It really was with Dave D'Angelo, our department chair in special education, and Patty Roscoe, in looking at how are our students with special needs faring on these assessments based on this performance index, and how can we get more support to those students. So one of the initiatives that the board has supported is our co-teaching, especially in math, in how do we make sure that our students with special needs can have access to Algebra 2. And that's something that we're excited to see that initiative moving forward. We're very appreciative with our new math center specialist, Maya Führer, and she will be working specifically with students in algebra in our math center. And so we'll continue to monitor these points and use this data to truly inform what we are doing and the direction we want to take students in. None of it would be possible without the money to fund it. So thanks to the generosity of our town, this is giving us some breakdown per pupil. It gives us a trend, and the state changed their reporting. So the top table takes us through 2017, but the bottom table is our current 2018-19 data. So they changed the way they report the information. I'd imagine in future years, you'll see the per pupil expenses here. It does give a good, and it gives the same information. It's just a different, slightly different table in instruction and library. And you could see all of these categories and our per pupil expense at the end. That is my rapid run through with the data. This is a hyperlink. So when you see this information, you can click on it and get to the portal, or just get on EdSite and take a look at some of that information. So with a shout out to my Brooklyn upbringing and my fast talking, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
We appreciate it. Thank you. Board members, any questions? And again, a lot of good information in there. Definitely need to look through it before we get into budget season. But any questions in general on the information?
Todd, I had one quick question.
Yep, go ahead.
With regard to, Gina, the last slide with the per pupil cost, where is the debt service in that? Is it instructional?
Sorry. Gina, you're muted. Hold on.
Sorry, there you go. So the debt service is not, because we're a regional high school, I don't think that they report that information in there. That's an excellent question, Cheryl, but there's other regional schools that probably carry their own debt. I've not looked to see if it's reflected anywhere.
Okay, so that's a true cost, that the debt service is stripped out of that cost. Okay.
Yeah, when the state presents their numbers, they don't show the debt because there's so few regional school districts who can have debt, because the vast majority of school districts can't carry debt. So it skewed the numbers. They just sort of, to equalize it, they don't bother including the debt for the 15 or so regional schools in the state.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
All right, other questions? Saw a hand. Oh, Mike, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the presentation, Gina. Again, I just want to just point some things out that, may be helpful to us. I look for this strategic profile report each year, and it's very important that we use last year's Prouder report and compare that with this year's enrollment numbers, because that's where the tool is useful. If we take this year's Prouder report and we put it next to this year's enrollment, they align because Dr. Proud looks at this year's enrollment when he makes this year's projections. So that number will look the same. So it's important for us to note that as the trend has begun, it has not seemed to flatten, in that I believe we are 4 students below Proud's projections for this year. Just so we're all aware, he projected 831, and it seems like we have 827. And again, the other area to be, aware of is, while we look at the staffing levels, it's also, our most difficult, our most challenging, our most dreaded statistic that we have to look at, which is over the next 5 years, we're projected to lose or to have 167 fewer students, which is essentially 21% of the student population is going to decline over the next 5 years, which is a staggering amount for us and presents many challenges for us. And so again, something that we all need to be well aware of so that we can preserve the Barlow experience for our students moving forward, and that we can articulate to the communities that we are well aware of the costs associated and the enrollment numbers, so that the communities are well aware that that is a strong consideration and something that we look at frequently. So I just thought that was important. I know it's not the information everybody wants to hear, and it's not the one that I want to report, but I do think that it's important for us to realize that. So.
Thank you. All right, any other board member questions, comments? And thank you, Dr. Penn, for moving through that material quite rapidly, and definitely look forward to looking at it in more detail. It's a good information for the board members, again, as we get into budget season, to understand the profile. So, all right, with that, let's move on. Our next item is item F, the progress on diversity and inclusion consulting services. So I don't know if we can cover this one fairly quickly, because I do know we need to get to the budget committee charge, Cheryl, so we can get that squared away. And then we still have administrator reports. And I realize we have administrators on here late as well. So we'll try to move through these next couple items. So we get a quick update on the progress on the diversity and inclusion consulting services.
So we had our first meeting with our consultants. We have 2 of them from the Connecticut Center for School Change. We have created a JBHS DEI advisory committee. It's a mouthful. We'll see if we can get a shorter name for it. It's a committee made up of teachers, of support staff. There are parent reps, and there were student reps. We had our first meeting that really took us through defining terms. So what do we mean when we talk about diversity? What do we mean when we say the word equity or inclusion or equity lens? It was informative. This is a great committee. These are people who want to dig in and do this work. The consultants are fantastic. So we're in the process right now of scheduling our next meeting with the advisory committee. But in the meantime, the consultants are going to be working with our support staff on December 2nd. That's a Wednesday. And as you recall, that is an early dismissal day where our teachers have professional development. But we use those Wednesdays for our support staff. It's very difficult to get the office staff and the paras and the BTs and security and everyone together. So we've really taken advantage of a lot of these early dismissal days since it's their working hours. The consultants will be with us from 12:30 to 2 o'clock. and they will present in a similar way that they worked with the committee in defining terms and setting direction, give that foundation to the support staff. And then on December 7th, that's a faculty meeting day. And so all of our certified teachers will be involved in a faculty meeting. And as I've done in the past, when I've wanted to bring in a guest speaker from Yale or to talk about the SEL or whatever the initiatives are, we'll use that time for the Connecticut Center for School Change to come and address the faculty. And do some of that work. From there, the consultants are planning on creating focus groups. They've got a very ambitious timeline, and they'd like to get some focus groups from the school and the parent and student groups to take some surveys and provide information that will go back to the advisory committee, and the advisory committee will then start talking about what is the plan and how are we going to initiate some of these goals in the short term and in the long term. So they have set the stage for, there are many things we can do now and we can focus on. And then there are many goals that we'll have for Barlow moving forward. In fact, they've consulted with systems, and those advisory committees are still in place, guiding this work 4 or 5 years out. So we are excited about that. I am so proud of our student reps on the committee in just their willingness to share things from their perspective. There's some overlap. So we used some of the students, Cheryl, from the curriculum committee, when the curriculum committee opened its charge more to include parents and students. And so I think that overlap will be good for the curriculum committee as well to take that work back. And it really does tie the school goals I presented earlier with our professional development opportunities and our district goals going forward. So I'm pleased with that work and look forward to updating you in greater depth at another time.
Anyone have questions? I have a couple of comments. I think I saw a hand, so I'm searching tiles here. Mike, sorry, gotta hold your hand up higher. I can see it, all these tiles.
It always up. I feel bad.
Just go to you all the time. Yeah.
So, thank you. I appreciate Dr. Harris. You sent us the information from the group, which was helpful. But as I glanced through it, there's a lot of focus group work in many different areas, and so I was wondering. Obviously not for tonight, as we're up against the late hour. It would be very helpful, I think, if someone could put together an overview document of what our objectives are for this group and moving forward. In other words, what's the end game? We intend to, in the end, have this. We want to have that. We want to have the other thing. Rather than, it's very unclear from reading the proposal, and we're hearing that there's lots of great work going on, but I get questioned from people, and I'd like to be able to give them concrete answers. Is it curriculum work? Is it practices? Is it new programs? I'd like to be able to articulate exactly what it is that we're going to be able to provide our students that we're not doing now. So that would be helpful at some point moving forward.
Yeah, I would second that. I think it would be helpful to I see from the JBHS DEI advisory committee. Again, if they have some goals, what they're trying to accomplish the rest of the school year, and through this process. Also, if their minutes from their meetings would be helpful to see those, or who the members are of that committee, just so the board and public can be aware. But it would be helpful to, and maybe have at a future meeting, we have someone from the committee come and present on, what their goals are, what they've accomplished to date, and so forth. It would be helpful. We would appreciate that. So we can look at it for a future board meeting.
Yeah, Mike and Todd, what I might suggest in response, I agree with both of your comments, right? To have just an idea of the board or just to communicate to not the board and the public what the overall objectives were. I recall the last time the curriculum committee looked at this, and even the board looked at this, Dr. Pierce-Newell outlined the long-term goals versus short-term goals. So it might be helpful perhaps for once the DEI committee that's in the school and then curriculum committee can report to the curriculum committee what those goals are. And then that should hopefully correspond to what the budget needs might be for next year.
Yep. And I also think even aligning as well with the task force that's across the joint board. So just kind of seeing what each of them are lined up to do. And your point, Cheryl, being able to, roll it back into budget, curriculum, any changes that need to happen coming out of it. So that would be helpful. All right. Any other comments, board members, on that? Administration. Okay. All right. Very good. And then the last item on discussion and possible action, the item G, budget committee charge renewal. So everybody should have the charge in their pack of materials. And Cheryl, do you want to?
Yep. If I can, I'd like to.
Yeah, you should be able to share.
Okay. Let me share with me.
Pull up the charge of the committee.
Okay. Okay, should be able to see here that this is the existing charge of the committee. Hopefully everybody can see it. Let me scroll a little bit. So this was established back in 2017 by the board that existed at that time. And I think for the most part, the budget committee that we have in place, there are 2 reps. I think the one we probably have to add our treasurer as the chair, but the overall discussion why I teed this up with the board is because per this existing charge, which is in force right now, we are required to just renew this charge, review the committee charge after 2 years. And then we have to vote whether or not we want to extend the charge as written and then also define a time interval. So at the time this was established in 2017, so it was in force. And then because we haven't modified it, we just have to probably go through the administrative exercise of making sure the current board that's in place right now is in agreement with this charter and if not, so modify it. So we'll tip it over.
All right, so hopefully everybody's had a chance, and then we need a motion. Let's get that on the floor, and then we can talk about any changes if needed. Obviously, the date needs to be amended, but if there are any other material changes that we need to do. So you've got a motion.
So I have, can you see this motion on the screen?
Yes.
Yeah, all right, so I enter a motion because I think I can to extend the charge of the budget committee as written on October 17, 2017 until such time the board decides to change the charge. So it was written this way just so we don't have to necessarily go through this exercise every 2 years, but every board certainly can at any point. So I'll ask for a second.
Second.
All right. All right, so we've got a motion on the floor. Any comments from board members, either on the committee charge or the duration that's proposed here?
Yeah, so the reason it was written with the charge needing review every 2 years or to be reviewed after 2 years was because when this committee was formed, there were a couple of members on the board that felt that this was something that could have great value. But I would also say there were equal number of board members that felt that there might not be a great value in the budget committee, that it might be more of a detriment and put more workload on the administrators than the actual value that would come out, any value that would come out of the committee's findings. So that was why it was written that way. Obviously, there's been some fine work that's going on there, and it's I am one that I don't know that I see the immense value that I think some who work in that field with data and with financial forecasting see. But I certainly respect that that's not my area of expertise. And so I feel like, we should continue the committee, that it seems to be working well. And unless the administration feels that somehow it's too much work, I think that we should move forward with it. And I have no objections. I think it's fine.
Another board member comment. I'd say from my own perspective of being on the committee, I do appreciate the efforts they're trying to make, and we've started to make, and getting a 3-year plan put together, financial forecast, and trying to tie it to curriculum. I think that's been helpful, and I'd like to see this committee continue moving forward with the curriculum committee to continue to build out that model.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's any place else to do that. It doesn't fit in audit committee or any of the others, so I think it's the appropriate place.
Mm-hmm.
So any other board member comment? So the motion, if you could go, sorry, Cheryl, back to your motion. Or just reread it, I guess, just to make we're clear on the motion. Yeah.
And Julie, I'll share this with you. Move to extend the charge of the Budget Committee as written on October 17, 2017, until such time the board decides to change the charge.
Okay, so this will be indefinite to the committee.
I have it.
Okay.
You got it? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, then we'll move to a vote on the motion. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay, great. Thank you, Cheryl, for that. And Clarence, we look forward to having another committee for you to attend. The first meeting's coming up soon. All right, let's move on then to administrative reports, item 7. And again, apologize, we flipped the administrative reports and discussion possible action. So apologies for administration being on here late, but I know there are a few reports in the packet. So Dr. Penn, Dr. Harrison, I don't know how you want to cover through those, but you can try to be brief.
If I could jump in, some of the admin report you've already heard, the DEI and the college, but I'd like to invite Mike DeStefano to just highlight a couple of things in this special ed report, and then Mike Santangeli. Clarence thought I was kidding when I said just call everybody Mike, that if you don't know their name, right? And so those are the 2 reports I'd just like to highlight, because Coach Santangeli has new news to share, and Mr. DeStefano, we'll start with you on the student service update.
Great, thank you, Gina, and Clarence and I haven't had a chance to meet yet, so welcome, Clarence.
Thank you.
I'm growing on the list of senior admins in the district, and I've only been here for about 7 weeks. So, so I'm just going to highlight really quickly. In terms, you've seen this format before, and if we look at page 2, some of our out of district placements, they've remained steady this year, which is great news. Many districts, have seen an uptick in out of district placements. The increase for next year is also taking into account the changes in the law in terms of servicing students to age 22. So you see that in that there's some adjustments for next year as well. In terms of co-taught classes on page 2, I just want to point out right now, and Gina showed some great data from the ed site in terms of some of the gains we made in the area of mathematics. Right now at Joe Barlow High School, we only co-teach in the area of math. So students who have reading goals and writing goals, obviously we're looking, you're always looking at servicing students in the least restrictive environment along that continuum of services. And right now, if students have reading and writing goals, those are being addressed within an integrated support class or within a self-contained class. But those are the numbers for the co-taught classes that we have right now, just in the area of mathematics. Again, I'm going to really speed through this. So I'll answer any questions you have. One highlight I want to point out is our Bridge program, which is a really great program to support our students with social emotional concerns. At the beginning of the year, we had 8 students in the program. We're now up to 13. So I think that, that shows a significant increase. It shows the needs that we're seeing from our students. Some of our students are struggling emotionally, and this is a great support for them throughout the school day. And in terms of our referrals to special education, as I pointed out at the last board meeting, last year we had 12 referrals over the course of the entire year. At the last board meeting, we matched that at 12. We're now up to 18. And again, I think that's very consistent with the rest of the state. There's a lot of, many districts are seeing uptick in referrals to special education. I think again, that number from 1920 for those who weren't here last meeting, I think that's related a bit to the fact that we were closed for, a good portion of the school year. However, there's definitely an uptick in referrals to special education this year. In terms of the Section 504, Gina's on here. I'll let her jump in if she'd like to, but you could just see as well that in terms of compared to last September, compared to September for all grade levels, we've seen an increase in terms of students with disabilities who require accommodations, who may not necessarily require specialized instruction through special education. So there's been an increase in each grade level in terms of 504 eligibility. In terms of just some highlights, again, we welcomed a new speech and language pathologist, Sinead Fulton, to our district. We also, we have a school psychologist sub, Stacey Adams, who's been amazingly helpful in helping us keep up with these uptick in evaluations and keeping us up to date with triennial evaluations, as well as we have a great school psychologist intern, Alexis, who's been helping support all of our students, including our special education students. And then the last piece is just our annual performance report, and Region 9 met requirements in all areas, which is the highest. The highest you could be ranked is meeting requirement, and we met all those requirements. But that is for the 18-19 school year. It goes back a little bit. So that was a faster version of what Gina did, but I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone has.
So are you seeing any, concerning uptick in social emotional issues with students that may be directly related to the pandemic or, outside circumstances? I'm just, I think it's helpful if the board keeps themselves abreast over whether, this is causing, a concerning level of rising issues, or whether you're seeing that, we're kind of charting the same way that would be in a normal year.
Yeah, and again, if Paula wants to, Paula works with our school counseling staff, so if she wants to jump in as well. But what I would say is that definitely, I've seen an uptick, and I think the trend's been going in this direction even pre-COVID, but I think that anxiety is a huge factor. And when you really think about it, school avoidance was a big factor pre-COVID as well. And now you're also throwing into it, the ability for students to stay home. And so there's some of that school avoidance is almost an accommodation for them. So I think there's the uptick in anxiety, school avoidance, which is being accommodated in some ways by the ability to stay in a cohort C. So I worry a little bit even post-COVID, how when we that one day we all hope for where we can take our masks off and all be back in person, seeing students having to be reintegrated back in the building, haven't been allowed to stay home for such a long period of time with that anxiety. But we have an amazing school counseling staff. We have a great school social worker and 2 great school psychologists. So we've been really on top of these students and working with the families to help support them. But to answer your question, I think that there definitely is an uptick in social emotional issues with students, and I think anxiety is one I really highlight right now.
Thank you.
Just a follow-up question to Mike's point. Is there, do we have all of the either children with IEPs or 504s? Do they tend to be in cohort D?
Well,
Um,
go ahead, Gina.
no, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, cohort D included students with IEPs and then also regular education students as well. So yeah, so when we look at cohort D in terms of special education, we're really trying to look at it, and we have an administrative team that does administrative reviews. Some decisions are made at PPTs, but we're really trying to look at supporting our students where we may be, the students are struggling and we may be having difficulty with implementing the IEP. So we want to make sure we're giving them as much instructional time and support as possible.
And those students really will be a focus if the trends are, the health data is trending as Dr. Harrison indicated, where we're in an all out, we totally lose our cohort D, right? All of those students would be out. And so paying attention to those students and getting them the help they need and that personal touch is going to be a big focus and an area of concern.
Right.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to, a separate question on the gradual increase in integrated support in the class size. Is that giving you any concerns? Because it seems to be ticking up a little bit as well at all grades.
Yeah, I think that, that's something we're always monitoring, and we try to keep the class sizes as low as possible. I think that, given students struggle as they, as we go to PPT on students or as we see students that are struggling, we're always trying to figure out a way to increase support for them to, have them be as successful as possible in school. And so that's a little bit of why you're seeing some increases in terms of additional students in integrated support. One of the very few, I should say probably one of the few, if any, advantages of, being in this model is that even if numbers get a little bit higher, the students, the class ratios are really small because not all students are in 4 days a week. So even if you see I'm just going to pull up the list right now, even if you see an integrated support where there's 11 students, that might be, 6 students on one day and 5 students the next day. So right now the numbers are low, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on moving forward. And some students, the other piece is the bridge program, and that's such a good support for students all day long. And there are some students who may be in integrated support class and maybe they're struggling, so they might be accessing the bridge and might make that integrated support class number a little bit lower as well.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, because Mike is referring to Bridge as a program.
Yeah, a service.
Historically, have called it a service.
Yep.
Those students are all taking a seat in a class. They have their general education curriculum, their general education teachers. They just access that service as needed to help them transition, hopefully in full. And we know from the data that Dave has presented in the past, the service works very, very well in getting them where they need to go.
Okay. Other questions? Yeah, I do really appreciate the report, the layout. I like the highlights at the end as well. And yeah, the increasing numbers in bridge and integrated support, a few of these trends are a bit concerning. So I do appreciate seeing these reports every month.
And the
numbers go.
And the one other thing just to point out too, which I didn't mention, is that, part of the increase is as we're getting more referrals to special education, there might be students who are found eligible, and that's going to, if they require that service, that'll bring up the number as well.
Yep.
All right. We go to Mike, other Mike.
Yes. Thank you, Mike, and to the other Mike.
To the other Mike. Mike had a really long report for athletics to share, but now it could be a little simpler. Right? So Mike could be very brief.
I'll be pretty concise. Just to start off with all this, craziness going on with the pandemic and whatnot, we were able to actually get through a fall season. So for that's a real positive situation for the school and the students, for me, for coaches in the community. So that was huge. As you can see through the report, many of our teams had a lot of success as well through the regions. They played in a regional format. Many of them making it even to a championship game or winning a championship within the region. So just a wonderful situation, a lot of juggling, a lot of schools shutting down and rescheduling, but it was all worth it at the end for our students and our student athletes to have an actual season, a fall season. Now the winter season started off very promising. We had our winter sports night on the 12th, obviously in virtual format, and we had huge numbers sign up for the winter season, actually larger than what we usually see for the winter. But then we were told today by the CIAC that we won't be starting the winter season until January 19th. So they're going to obviously use this time when they, after all the conversations this evening pertain to athletics as well, as far as the numbers increasing throughout the state. And so the state DPH felt it would be best to just put everything on hold, take a break and move it into January. And then obviously people are asking, why January 19th? Well, after the holidays, they want to give it 2 weeks past the holidays for people to quarantine or whatever they need to do after potentially seeing family and whatnot, then get this into the winter season. At this point, they're going to try to play all the sports starting then, all the winter sports. But obviously, as we get closer, we'll find out more details. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock, the CIC will actually have a Zoom conference with all the ADs in the state, and they'll give more specific information pertaining to individual sports at that time. But as of right now, the winter season will not start until January 19th at the earliest.
And just to be clear, that's all practice, conditioning, nothing's happening until the 19th of January.
Really good question, Todd. So yes, as far as specific skill work practices that pertain to the actual winter season, none of that will start until the 19th. What we will find out tomorrow at 1 o'clock is, can they do some type of conditioning on campus like they would like in the summertime or whatnot, and off-season training. So that's one of the questions that will be answered tomorrow. But as of right now, is there anything that pertains to the CIAC regulated season that will not begin until the 19th?
I just have a quick question because I'm intrigued. What is a virtual swim meet?
Oh, okay. So basically the way they that's a it's a new world here.
I saw that on the list. I was like, what?
So what they did in order to try to create some type of league meet situation, they can't have all 14 schools go to one location like they would in the past. So what they did was they allowed every school to either create a dual meet situation or just swim on their own if they have their own pool, and basically record it and then send the results into to the person who coordinates it for the league. And then through that they compiled the information and came up with who was the winning team, who were the top swimmers. So they kind of did it just in satellite locations to create what usually is done in one location. So that's how they did it, to compile the information. The only sports that actually had a league championship and not a regional championship were swim and cross country, because they're timing sports. And so therefore they can just compile and use that calculation to figure out who's the top 24 or whatnot.
Thank you.
There you go. Great question. New world.
Interesting. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm Adam Michaels, so it's off to you.
I have a question just with respect to communication. Since the CIAC just decided, right, that was just communicated, what's the next step in terms of, and after you have the meeting tomorrow, what's the next steps in terms of communicating to the families who already attended and signed up for, the presumably winter sports? And then with respect to budget, I know that the stipends, et cetera. So what's the plan for that? I guess it will just be deferral expenses. I would assume.
Yeah, so basically that's why we, decided to have the winter sports meeting last week, because we wanted to get all the contact information that we could. So all the coaches and booster clubs have everybody's contact information for, say, girls basketball. Okay. So as we get information, I will give that to the coaches, and the coaches will get that out to the families. Plus, we'll send it out on Twitter and Instagram, like we did today. If you notice, we sent out what came through the CIAC through Twitter and Instagram. And as we get closer and we get more and more information, we'll probably send more stuff out through the listserv as well. So we're going to try to work within individual programs to get as much information out as possible. And then obviously for those people we're missing, try to get it through the social media aspect. The second part of that with the stipends is this is actually good news. The way they did this, they actually made a decision, and rather than dragging it on like they did in the fall, where it was like, oh, we might play football. We might play football. Okay, start football. Now we're not going to play football. And they were already in 4 weeks. And, all of a sudden you're saying, okay, is there a stipend? Is there not a stipend? Oh, now we're going to play 7-on-7 touch football. Okay. Oh, but then we're also going to put it in April. Like we asked as ADs, please make a definitive season. We can't keep spending this kind of money. People don't have these budgets. They're budgeted for one season. You can't make multiple seasons for each sport. So by them putting it on the 19th, as awful as it is, and how, we really would love for it to start on the 21st of November like it was supposed to, in this aspect, as far as stipends, it's actually very helpful because now it's a definitive season. It'll probably run from January 19th all the way to April 17th, and that will encompass that supplemental season as well that they created for football. So it all will kind of group into one thing. That's the one positive that could come out of this, on top of actually being able to play in a safe environment. So to your point, that was one of the things that we really pushed hard as ADs for the CIAC to take into account. So that's why that was one of the reasons why they made it so definitive for all sports to the 19th.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
Sorry, any other questions for Mike? All right, just quickly, Gina, I don't know if you were going to address on the student activities. I know I'd asked just to see, what other activities are kind of going on. So you have some information in your report, but
I do, and I'll ask Julie McTague, who is still on here. Julie has been working very carefully with Karen Bender, who is our administrative assistant, who has been doing a lot of that organizational work. And I'll ask Julie to just jump on and speak for a sec about our activities program.
Sure. So for everyone and Todd, so we have a lot of activities that the virtual platform works very well for. So they were able to get going even before the school year started. They're able to meet to practice online. They can attend kickoff events like is in the administrative report online. They can attend competitions online. So the online platform works really well for groups like debate, for our chess team. So those are competitive teams. It's worked really well for groups such as the literary magazine. They're able to meet, to plan, to lay out documents and so forth. Our robotics group is another group that before the school year even began, they were meeting with students and they were doing some skill building. And so that works very well for them. You have some groups that were able to use the virtual platform to do some planning for the year, but not being able to meet in person for the first month plus of school hinders their work. So a really great example of that is the Murals Club. So they've met several times on an online platform and they've been talking about their plans for the year and murals that they would like to do, but they weren't able to get into the building after school in person to actually paint on the walls. But just recently, we were able to get the approval so that students could stay after school and be in person to begin to meet. And so that's where Murals is a great example that they can take the mission of their group and now they can really get to work with that. And then you have some groups that an online platform really just didn't work. And so we didn't have the fall musical, of course. So we've postponed that to the spring, and we hold on to hope that we might be able to have a musical in the spring. Because we're able to now meet in person. I know the timing seems a little bit, but we are putting plans together for a winter show with the thought of how could we do this virtually. And there's many schools in the area who are running a theater program and are able to do a virtual performance. A musical wouldn't work well for that, but they have ways to do that. So our winter production is usually a student-led production. So we have a draft proposal where students will be able to submit their proposal of what the winter show would be, and seeking adult supervisors for that. But Cheryl, kind of linking to what you were saying, where there has been, no activity for the first quarter, such as not having a fall musical. Of course, those stipends won't be, given out for, as people, there was nobody to compensate. There was no fall musical. Couple of other groups where there would not be a stipend, where they really weren't able to get work off the ground the first quarter, would be like our a cappella groups. As Max was talking about, rehearsing online just does not work for our singers and musical groups. But now that they can meet in person, they have plans for that. It's tricky. As Mike was saying, it's not as if for all of our activities, they do an equal amount of work in each one of the 4 quarters. And so if I talk about robotics does a lot of planning. It's very time intensive in the 3rd quarter of the year, but we don't compensate people based on their hours. We compensate them for the whole year, where most advisors receive half of their stipend for the fall and the other half of their stipend for the spring. So while robotics advisors, if you were to look at it, each and every year they do less advising, fewer hours of advising in the fall semester than they do in the spring semester, but we don't prorate it like that. So for some of our groups, it's a little bit hard. I have some groups where, of course, I know that there was no work done during the first quarter. Central office, right, is looking to see who to pay stipends for the fall semester and trying to think about sort of the promised work for the 2nd quarter and trying to project. In some cases, it would be easier just to wait until the whole school year or 3 quarters of the school year were to pass to be able to look at more of the year and project for that last quarter. But I can say with 100% sincerity and to all of you that, of course, it's only with integrity that we make those determinations as to who should be receiving their stipends and to what degree for the fall semester.
Julie, can you tell us how many clubs are not being run and what types of clubs? Obviously, the music clubs, music groups, we know that there's a challenge for them, but are there any other clubs that we've run in the past that we're currently not running? And can you kind of give us a little detail as to why they may not be running and what our plans are moving forward?
Sure. So there's actually very few that aren't engaged on some level. So the fall musical, of course, and that's in the operating budget, but that's being held for this possible spring, because we don't have anything for the spring, right? There's no stipended position for the spring. So we're holding that. You have Model UN, where there just isn't an advisor right now. So of course, that's not running. And then, like I said, the a cappella groups, as well as Tri-M, really did not get underway in the first quarter. And other than that, there really aren't any groups where they have a stipend advisor where they weren't doing at least some planning and some work in the first quarter. And a lot of groups were, I would say, to full capacity, really engaged and meeting regularly in order to get ready for when they could meet in person and really carry things out. And others, the virtual platform just works really well. So you really don't have many, Mike, that aren't running.
Because Julie, to follow up on Mike's question, to the extent, we obviously want all of the clubs and activities to run, right, as best we can, right? So obviously there's a money saving component to it now, but ideally it'd be nice if we can actually get them, even though it might be later because they can't, for example, the musical, right, having that in the fall. Is there a way that would we be at a point where we actually would just run out of time and not be able to have everything run by the end of the school year?
Right. So when you look at the list of stipended activities, they include your student government. So student government has been meeting every single week to plan for, Spirit Week and other things. So student council, the 4 class councils, those advisors, they've been meeting with students. They've been doing fundraisers, class t-shirts and the like, right? Holding their elections. They've been an active group. You then look at our competitive teams, right? So robotics, like I said, before the school year even began, they've been meeting. They meet weekly, right? So those advisors are still engaged. I think it's comparable to what they were doing before. I think what's actually going to be is for them, when it comes to January and February, when they would normally be in build season, what will their season look like then? But what their first quarter looked like is very similar. You have chess team. Chess team has been meeting. Chess team's been competing, very comparable to what we had before. So when I go through, I'm trying to think of National Honor Society, the French and Spanish Honor Societies, right? They are putting together their applications. NHS was actually scheduled to meet this afternoon in order to review applications. They're planning their induction ceremonies. Those are up and running. So really it's the fine and performing arts, where not being able to come in to actually do murals, not being able to actually rehearse in person, has really hindered them. Yearbook, they're planning a yearbook. Literary magazine, they're planning the way they always did. So it really hasn't interfered to that, but I'm just saying, because of how this year is with central office requesting at this time, which is just a little bit past a quarter in, to have that assessment, we've never looked at it that way. We've always compensated for work done and sort of promised work for the year and anticipated. It's just a little harder to know what that promised work will look like, as the year continues.
And how has student participation been? Are we at the same levels for the activities that are running, or has it been less?
So I'm pausing because
I'm sure it's different in every activity, but I
Right,
guess
right.
on the whole, are the students engaging in the other activities, or are
Right.
they just not interested with everything going on?
I think we're seeing a little bit of both, right? So there's little, like, I think there's a fatigue, there's a uncertainty that's coming with their season and so forth. So like, even when you heard Max saying, that's unusual to hold student elections and only have one person run for student council. It was Max, and we had 3 vacancies, and we filled those vacancies, but it was, where did that come from? And then very interestingly, for the senior class, we had 2 students run and filled our president and our secretary, and then we're left with 2 vacancies. That actually wasn't true in the sophomore and junior classes. They actually had competitive races where they did do their videos and they put up their posters and so forth. So where does that come from? And so we do hear from some students, like they can't envision it. They can't get into it with kind of how a school just feels this year. And I can dig into that a little bit more, but it varies. Like, debate is up again and it's running. And maybe it's because it has a real clear structure and a real clear path forward. And, what's also in the admin report is then you have students who are interested and staff who are volunteering their time when they don't have the activity period during the day. Right. So you have groups like, again, you have soup. You had this group of 3 students who just, again, before the school year even started, just had a plan for how can we still make sandwiches, bring them in, collect them, and bring them to Dorothy Day. And youth mental health first aid, it's just such a driven group with such an important mission. Those students are determined to still meet, and we're fortunate that staff is willing to give their time when they don't have the dedicated time within the school day. So it's where I think too, some students are taking initiative and see a real clear mission. And then again, it's more like the music, I've been hearing a lot that they just, even with regionals, with Western regionals, having talked to Mrs. Whitman recently, usually there's a whole, a healthy number of students who want to go out and audition for Western regionals. And this year I don't really want to record myself and submit it and audition in that way. They preferred when they got to go down to Wilton High School, for example, and be in person and audition, and then hopefully have that in-person experience. They just aren't, in some cases, looking for another virtual experience.
Okay. Well, it's unfortunate, but hopefully, as the activities are still running and continue to go, hopefully, more kids will continue to get involved or get engaged again.
Agreed.
Glad we are able to run the activities and to pay the stipends to the teachers for the extra work. It's all important.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other?
I think we are.
Dr. Pinn, anything else on the administrative reports? Clarence, I know
think
we've
so.
got a finance one in here, but seeing it's your second day, we could probably let you off the hook unless there's anything you wanted to talk about on the finance reports.
No, I would just say, Mr. Chairman, that reading the charge from the committee charge from the budget committee, one thing I will note, there's a quote about to examine current budgeting and financial reporting practices and explore possible improvements to such practices. So today was my second day in the office, so it's my second time seeing this report, and I will just note that the format is not something I'm accustomed to. It's sort of unique to me in that in the last column you have your encumbered, and generally the way this is done in most school districts, you have your budget, then your adjusted budget, then your expenditures, then your encumbrances, and then you get a remaining balance. We've sort of set it up showing our unspent, we call unspent budget, is 3 columns in. Generally in most school budgets, that's the last thing you see because you want to see what's left over. And I don't know why that is. That may be for some reason, but I just, one of the things that I noticed, and there's a couple accounts that are, we're showing negatives on to be expected. There's a certified one, there's maintenance supplies, which I suspect is COVID related. So there's explanations, but what I tend to look at is the last page about overall budget, and it says, we've spent 91%, but 60% of that is encumbered. So you just want to make sure it's very clear so someone who's not familiar with these can understand what they're seeing, what it means. Because if someone read this and is not familiar, they said we spent 91% of our money in November. You really haven't done that. You've encumbered 60% of your budget. That's why the 91% is showing. So like I said, I get some more time, I can dig in, I can see, why it's presented a certain way, and then I can make some recommendations about if I think it makes it a little more clearer.
All right. Excellent. Well, we appreciate that insight and look forward to your after you've reviewed it and your comments on that and any changes to make our reports more comprehensive and easier to read for the public and the board members. We appreciate that. And then so, Dr. Bennett, are there any other reports? I know there were quite a few in the pack. I didn't mean to cut you off, but trying to move us along.
No, none that I need to go over. I would ask if I could send the other administrators away so they could.
Yes, absolutely. And we've got a few more items to go on the agenda, but yes, if the administration would like to exit, we would appreciate again your time, and we'll look to switch the items around on the agenda for the next meeting, get administrative reports earlier.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for staying late, and the information is very helpful. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. So moving on, we're on to item 8, committee reports. So any committees to report?
Before we go on to item 8, Todd, can I ask a question about administrative reports?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm reading the Assistant Superintendent Curriculum Director's report, and I circled back to our meeting minutes from our October meeting, and I'm trying to kind of mesh that with some of the comments and concerns we seem to have earlier relating to professional development time allocation. And I know that we have in here that Board of Ed members asked Dr. Pearson Hugo for further breakdown on what took place on the professional learning days. And when I looked at the report, I do not see that. So I was wondering if there's somehow we can request it again so that maybe we can get a further breakdown on the professional learning days?
So, Mike, I could speak to that since on the back page, there are the specific skills we covered on those days. So I'm not sure what you're looking for. So we had 100% of our faculty engaged in setting up Google Classroom, and we broke out what those skills are. And that took us through PD, the Zoom specific skills. So we broke that down. So I guess I'm unclear as to what you're looking for, that I can make this in a format or in a
So when you say that's for what, this month?
this is what we've done in October and November up until tomorrow is our next PD.
Right, that would
so
be
these were our October days, right? So
Oh.
tomorrow it's Google Forms.
No,
and
I understand. I can read that. I think we were more looking for what's been done to date. We were looking at how to better understand what types of training and professional development we were providing earlier in the school year. There was additional days added at the beginning of the school year. There was many professional development days that occurred. And then there was the evolution of the technology, whatever it's called, committee. And there's been lots of discussion relating to that. I think we were more interested in, have we trained teachers in Zoom? Have we trained teachers in Google Classroom? Have we trained them in, the different usages of the cameras?
But I think some of it's in there, and I guess what would be helpful maybe would be to understand. So, like as Mike was saying, October, November, if we did Google Classroom skills, and 100% of the teaching faculty have now taken those and are to some level of competency, right? So everybody's at a minimum bar or low skill level or whatever you want to call it. Same thing with Zoom specific. We were able to teach that in October, November. 100% of the faculty now know how to use this to a certain threshold. And then there are certain things that we still need to teach, as you're saying, Google Forms, right? So we've got 100% of the people signed up to take Google Forms. I think that would be helpful. And then if there are other skills that we need to have taught or move up their skill level in a particular technology. So we got the basics in Google Classroom, but we really want to spend some more time, helping them do some more advanced features in it. I think that would be helpful to kind of know what the training curriculum is, and then the percentage of people that have gone through it. Or if we're only able to get so many people into Google Classroom, so we still have 50% of the population that still needs to take it. I think that would be helpful. I don't know for you, Mike, if that's
that's exactly what I'm driving at is, if we need to know what we've done so that we know what's left to do.
So we have 100% of our staff on Google Classroom and 100% of our staff on Zoom. Now, how they're using those platforms for their particular curricula is what we'll continue to discuss. So, for example, the idea of assessments on Zoom will be an interesting conversation for teachers to have. But as far as the training, and I think it's part of when I was first sitting on a PD committee, we took a lot of time to understand how training is different from professional development. So the work we did in the beginning of the year with the PD days, it was all training. It was training in masks. It was training in what do you do when you need to sneeze. It was training in room setup, bloodborne pathogens, bee stings. It's all of those training elements. In October and then in November, we were still focused on training because we wanted to make sure that we were all aligned in our use of Google Classroom And that's where you see those 5 topics covered. And the same thing with Zoom, you know, our 4 topics in Zoom. Now what you'll start to see is in these professional dialogues, in teachers' SLOs, they'll start to take that training and apply it to their craft. So it's not just going to be, I want to know how to use Zoom breakout rooms. Now it could be, how are the Zoom breakout rooms going to inform my particular teaching? So what we needed to make sure we did in October and November is get all the teachers on the same platform, get them all setting up their classrooms the same way, all of those technical skills that they needed.
So we can say though, by that, then everybody is up to the same level on the same basics, right? So everybody knows how to use Google, everybody knows how to use Zoom.
Absolutely.
And so now they need to, you know, take it to the next level, start to change their content, their curriculum, their learning plans, and start using the tools and learning how to use them a little bit more. But everybody knows the basics at this point, which is a big concern. If we're going to go to full remote, you know, everybody at this point should know how to use Zoom and use Google Classrooms, right?
Taking attendance on Zoom and
Yeah.
all of those things, 100%, which is why it comes back to what Mike asked, if there's a different way I can present this or work with Stephanie to make it in a different format.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I guess I think many of us had concerns heading into the school year, and we're looking for we were looking to enhance the learning model for online learning. That was one of the objectives that we were really looking towards was you know heading towards you know optimizing and enhancing that online learning. And we had many discussions relating to, were there resources that were needed, were there tools that were needed, you know, what was it time? And we did receive you know many explanations relating to what we were doing, and believe me, nobody understands more than I do the difference between professional development and teacher training. And I think that we're all very much understanding if we're told that these 2 days are needed for teacher training to teach, you know, to be better equipped with PPEs and how to, you know, direct students in a COVID environment. I think that would, you know, be, you know, certainly understandable by board members. And I think there is a difference between that and training, professional development geared towards enhancing the online experience for students. And so that I think was something that we were very hopeful, and especially as we head into the very real possibility that we may be heading back into that model again, is that whether or not we can, you know, provide an enhanced learning experience for our students. I think that was what we were certainly looking for. So, I mean, it's fine. We're past that now. I just think it's easier when there's a clear understanding of what's occurring. I think it makes it easier for board members to be able to provide staff with the resources that they need and make sure that we give you the tools that are necessary. So,
right. And I think, you know, along that line, you know, when we go back to the full remote model, it would be helpful again to say, you know, what would be the additional training, professional development that would need to happen? You know, so, you know, you've got Google Forms happening tomorrow, so people can do surveys and things like that, which is great. But if there are other, you know, elements that come up as teachers are back into this full remote model, that if we need to come back to the board to ask for other, PD days or training, that we know what it is that you're, looking for and how it's going to improve the learning program.
So some of the just the nature of the staff that we have, they're going out and seeking tools, and then they come back to us. So it's not a top down. It's a lot of it are the teachers that are looking for. They've had to do it with lab experiences. How do you have students in cohort C who are never in your classroom get the experience of a dissection lab? And so JT Shem, our STEM department chair, they looked at resources and they came up with these different tools. And so that's part of what the teachers do, not even in COVID, where they're always innovating and looking at how do they best deliver their curriculum. I think what complicated this year was the tremendous need for training time. And the teachers are grateful, and I'm grateful that the board provided that time for all of that setup, everything we needed to do in the school. What I hope you're hearing me say is the high school is in a great place. The teachers know the tools. The tools are constantly changing. They're adding things to Zoom. They're adding things to Google. And our teachers are keeping up with that. We have peer practice coaches that engage teachers in these collegial conversations about integrity online, about the struggles of engagement. And so there's great things going on that I look forward to presenting to the board and giving you some examples of things teachers are doing. But I do want you to hear that I am 100% confident that tomorrow we are all distance learning. Every one of our teachers will be on Zoom. They'll be on Zoom in a competent, effective way. And they're doing an incredible job. So if there's something in the way the information's being reported that gives you any doubt, please let me know. And I will be glad to change that format or provide you with more resources, giving you a list of the skills and competencies that we know our teachers have, was, I hope, one step closer to what you're looking at. And we'll keep trying to tweak it and give you that information. But our teachers are heroes to these students, and they're doing an incredible job in truly nothing anyone signed up for, as Todd alluded to earlier. 3 different formats in one classroom,
Yep.
Making sure they're 6 feet away, making sure that students' needs are being met. They're doing an incredible job.
Yes, they certainly are. And again, we want to make sure they have the right tools and the training to do the job and continue to move forward with it. So it certainly won't be any easier. All right. Any other things on the administrative reports? Otherwise, we'll move to committee reports. I don't know if any of the board members, any committees, I don't think we had too many committee meetings. I think a couple of them got pushed to outside of this meeting. So if there anything on policies, Maureen?
See, it's moving along. You ask me this every time. We did get a little waylaid by the tri-board governance structure, and that has resulted in a bit of a deep dive, but we are continuing to make progress, and we are well through the 3,000 series. So
excellent. 3,000 out of
9.
All right.
It's a wholesale rewrite, so it will look very, very different. And it's also separating out regulations from what's policy, directives in terms of rights, roles, and responsibilities for the administration. It's consolidating them in different places. It's going to look very, very different. So I'm sure everyone will be happy with the product and appreciative of the Herculean nature of the effort when it's done.
I'm appreciative of the Herculean effort already, trying to get it there. So we appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question, a clarification on the policies? Are you using the CABE model template, or are you doing it from scratch?
We are in places using CABE model templates, and in places we're doing it from scratch.
Okay, thank you.
It is greatly streamlined. from some of CABE's policies. And in some instances, it's a great deal more complex than CABE's policies. If you wish to attend, we have standing policy meetings every Friday at 9 a.m. and you are welcome to attend.
Do it.
I'll take it under advisement.
I appreciate that. That's
Bring
a
your
good
coffee.
response, Council.
All right. Any other committee reports? Like I said, I know budget, curriculum was rescheduled, audit rescheduled. So I don't think
Facilities and fields met.
facilities and fields met. Yeah. Any other updates besides capital plan?
Nothing. No, I don't think.
Okay. All right. Very good then. We'll move on then to item 9, public comment. And it looks like we still have a few members of the public on. So again, if you want to raise your hand, I see Julia's there. So 2 minutes and announce your name and address. And Julia, we got you first. Go right ahead.
Julia Pemberton. I reside at 159 Umpqua Road in Reading. I also happen to serve as the first select woman in Reading. I'll be brief because of the late hour. I simply wish to welcome Mr. Zachary to the district on behalf of the town of Reading. I hope you have a wonderful tenure here. And Dr. Harrison, I'm looking forward to our meeting tomorrow. And I also want to commend the teachers and administrators for the remarkable job they're doing adjusting in these very difficult circumstances to teach our students. And again, thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else from the public? Well, late hour, I don't have as many tiles on the screen, so it's a little easier to scan now. All right.
We've worn them down.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
We've worn ourselves down.
Exactly.
That'll be the telling one next because it's board member comment. So any other board member comment? Item 10 on the agenda. No. All right. Then I will move to item 11 on the agenda, adjournment. If you have a board member make a motion to adjourn, I would appreciate it.
So move.
Seconded, Karen.
All right, it's Mike and Karen. Anyone preferring to stay later? Sure, Clarence gets the full
Mr.
experience of his
Zachary,
first
do you prefer to stay later?
I could filibuster for 45 minutes.
We know you can.
We know.
Yes.
We have to point out that one of the people in our meeting happens to be my superintendent intern doing an 093 program, Rich Sanzo. So sorry, Rich. part of his role is not having to, but having the opportunity to join us at all of our many board meetings. And yes, so thanks for being here, Rich.
Yes, thank you.
Rich,
Good learning experience.
Rich, I think you should go get a refund and reconsider your career aspirations because this.
At least, yeah, in regional districts, yes. This was a short meeting, so we're glad you could attend.
The record takes us clearly after 12. So
yeah, exactly. All right. With that, all in favor of adjourning? Aye. Yes.
Aye.
Very good. All right. We are now adjourned at 11:17. I will stop the recordings. Thank you again, everyone, for staying late, all the participation, good information, and for the couple of members of the community still on, thank you as well for sticking it out until 11:17 with us again. Thank you. Thanks,
Night.
everyone. Have a good night.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Nice to meet you. Bye-bye.
Bye.